Hey, what is up, interwebs? This is your headmaster at the GQAzndood Gaming Academy with another class session for you guys. It is, believe, super cold, chilly here in Bellingham, Washington, up in the Pacific Northwest. But we are here, hot fire tonight with some news. We got a lot to talk about. It's been a great week for content and a great week to talk about video games. So this week, we got an exciting episode packed with gaming goodness. This week, we're going to be covering, as always, gaming history. We're going to be diving into the release of the Nintendo consoles that changed the gaming landscape forever. But we'll also be exploring an intriguing article about the making of the Half-Life 2 documentary. It's probably going to offer some insights into one of the most influential games of all time. Hopefully you stick around, tell your friends, tell your neighbors to come check out the gaming category with your friends. But that's not all. We got some good stuff coming out tonight. As you know that, the holidays are coming up. There's a lot of sales coming along. I did an expanded version of this week and what's the deal. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, we got a jam-packed episode, so let's talk gaming. Of course, I want to introduce you guys to my faculty. I don't do this by myself. We got people from all over the place here, but tonight we're going to be joined by the usual three here. Let me introduce the first one, which is the man of the streets, the man with a plan, Blazing Ace Nelson. Where are you at?
What's good, neighborhood? Good to see y'all. Good to see y'all. Welcome back to class, y'all. I hope you're ready to learn something new today. And also, it is way too damn cold over here.
Yeah, it's that time of the year, man. But we're gonna fire things up in this segment. So, grab your favorite drink out there, folks. Stay tuned. I'm excited to talk about all the stuff that's coming out. And this is the holidays. A lot of stuff is coming out because that's when they want you to buy all the things, right? So, but not only that, we have some other stuff that happened during this time of year historically in video games. And I wouldn't be here talking about this if it wasn't for the next person I'm introducing, because he's the one. I would comfortably to say that he's the brains of the content here. So I'd love to have him here all the time. That's the Tragically Elite.
Hey team, how's it going? Sorry, just coming at you live from this hurricane bomb that's just like outside. This high low pressure that's coming through our place. Not too windy right now. Was windy earlier, so we decided to hop online and let's blow some of our own hot steam.
Yeah, for sure. We'll counterbalance the coldness with our own hot steam. How about that? So, I think we got a lot to cover tonight. Let's just roll with it. You know it. I know it. It's the one that takes up the most time, but I think it's the most fun time. We'll cover the this week in gaming history. So let's get straight to it.
Here we
All right,
go.
what do we got? All right, November 17, 2009. The I would say the most popular Assassin's Creed 2 did come out that day. So that's a good mention to have. Among other things that I thought that were really cool that came out during that time. Also, the PS3 released in the U.S. because last week we talked about how it was released in Japan, and also Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater came out in 2004 also. So a bunch of good things. What do you guys have for that day?
For the 17th, uh, two uh, two in particular that were still, you know, really major game changers aside from Metal Gear Solid 3. The first, kind of signaling the start of the week of Nintendo here on campus. Metroid Prime first dropped on the 17th, and this was back in 2002.
Is correct me if I'm wrong, but is Metroid Prime the first time we ever got to see Samus outside of Super Metroid, like outside of 2D? I guess what I'm getting at.
Yeah, Metroid Prime was the first 3D Metroid game.
And what a game it was.
Yeah, it was a game changer on its own because it was also the first time that you actually went to go on like a first person adventure with Samus.
Yeah, it's true. It's like it's almost like because the way they did it was the helmet. Like you were Samus, right? I
Hmm.
thought that was really neat. The UI was integrated with the helmet, and I think that as far as art aesthetic, I thought that was super cool. Um, I can't believe I forgot about this one. Maybe Nick, you should bring up the one that I missed because you and I have ties to that game.
Absolutely. I was going to say, shout out to chat. Good to see everyone again. As always, if you have anything that's on these days or any personal stories about the games we talk about, I'd love to hear it anyway. So feel free to chime in.
Mhm.
One of the games that our headmaster was alluding to was Left 4 Dead. The original Left 4 Dead launched on PC in 2008. I know that how many years ago now was it?
Oh,
GQ, we
jeez.
we did a playthrough of Left 4 Dead 2 with a couple
2016,
friends.
probably 2016, 2014.
Yeah, well, but I think maybe it was further back than that. We were both working at Reset,
Yeah,
and we were doing it right around that time. It was
probably
back
20,
when Let's
2014.
Plays were just starting to like really get a lot of traction, and you were starting to like take our heads and place them on the bodies. I of course played
That's true.
Nick,
That's
so it
true.
was very easy for me to
And
choose
I was
that
coach.
character. Yeah, you were coach.
No, and I had a good time. I actually never had since I didn't really own an Xbox or 360, and my PC ran like a hamster wheel. Having to play Left 4 Dead because that was the jam at the time, and I think Left 4 Dead honestly inspired a lot of the multiplayer shooters, co-op shooters during that era, in my personal opinion. So
Well,
Yeah, like
yeah, I'd
Left 4
say
Dead
so.
and Dead Island.
that was a good one too.
It was definitely part of that whole generation of games where we had like everyone had to do a zombie game.
Yeah,
Like Dead
yep,
Rising, Dead Island, you had Left 4 Dead. Like not just having Dead in the title, but all the zombie games that kind of came out at the same time. But Left 4 Dead was kind of ubiquitous one, is one of the first ones to like really do it right with
yeah,
its like fast frenetic kind of combat. It was easy to get into it. You had to work together as a team. There'd always be someone that runs off like Rambo and gets like caught and is like, come
yep.
get me guys. It's like,
Get
nope,
trapped.
you ran off,
Yep,
man. That's your fault.
yep. That's true.
There's always a Leroy Jenkins.
I do have to say, like the original run of that game, I went back and played it again recently. Definitely, like two was such an improvement on it, and then like the DLC they added afterwards was even better. So the game is better in its current form, I'd say. So definitely check it out if you haven't, or if you're looking for some old nostalgia. Again, that was 2008. But yeah, that was big.
All right. Speaking of not dead things, the undead, I'd say this console here deserves more merit than it should be. It was definitely the beginning of where Nintendo was. We'll take our own path versus what everybody else is doing. and that was the GameCube back in November 18th, released in 2001. It is 23 years old. Happy birthday,
Woo!
GameCube. Um,
The
to my
purse.
understanding, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the purse. That's what everyone called it. It looked like a little purse with its handle.
You know what? I thought it was goofy at the time. I was like, why the hell would you put like a little handle on it? Then, I was reading about it and they were like, the whole point was to bring it to your friend's house and play it. And I was like, that's actually kind of smart. But
Yeah.
who the hell would want to walk around with their console out in the street like that and trying to get mugged? Like, I don't want to do that.
Well, I mean, I made the mistake of doing that with an Xbox 360, only to wind up swinging said Xbox 360 at someone.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Basically,
Yeah,
a
I mean,
weapon.
the GameCube was something that I didn't have day one. I remember how like crazy it was for us to get like the mini disc. Nintendo,
Yeah.
like you said, doing their own thing and releasing in a disc format that wouldn't work anywhere else, and they don't want you to put another disc inside. That was a very clear choice by them to stay in the proprietary kind of stuff. They've
Yeah.
done cartridges, by that point. They're moving over to disc, and they do that to us.
I agree with that. And
Go ahead.
I say Andre said GameCube was ahead of its time graphically, and I highly agree with that. Just because I thought if the game had a multi-platform release, I always thought the GameCube one was the most solid-looking one.
I would say it's because of how tight that system was programmed and made with the stuff that's on there. It was always a little bit of a powerhouse in its own little right. It couldn't get super graphically intense, but everything you did on there ran really solid. I remember that.
Like I think out of all the consoles that actually came out during that particular generation, GameCube was definitely the most optimized, I would say.
It's definitely, it ran clean is what I'm and Nick is right. It did, like, the feeling that I would get if I were to play a game on the GameCube versus the PS2, like it ran smoother and it was like tighter. Like, it's hard to explain, but tighter is the best way to describe it for sure.
Yeah, I think it was just for whatever they did with it, with everything in there, it just ran really solid. So you never hear a complaint about that. The biggest thing always came down to, like, did it have the games you want? And as we found out after the fact, GameCube had some amazing releases that are still only on GameCube.
Oh, yeah.
We worked in a retro video game store, GQ and I, so we spent a lot in Ace, shopped at that store a lot, so we'll probably talk about it as well. But the amount of people that's still in the local area, especially GSARG, shout out to anyone that's part of that group. The amount of collectors still after certain GameCube games, like some of those games are still very expensive to get a hold of on the GameCube.
I remember one of the more expensive games definitely being what was it? I think it was Sin and Punishment.
I think that's a Wii game. Well, unless
there was the Wii game. I don't remember the GameCube game. For me, it was for a while there. It was like Twin Snakes. It was very hard to get a hold of. Still is a little hard to get a hold of.
Fire Emblem.
Fire Emblem. Yeah, the Fire Emblem game. Oh my gosh.
Mr. Robo, whatever. That was
Chibi Robo.
Chibi Robo, yeah.
Yeah, Chibi Robo was really hard to get a hold of. I remember, like, Smash Brothers is still super popular, so that one just always flies off the shelf. We ran a couple tournaments on GameCube, actually, in some of our retro store game tournaments. Like, it's still super popular, that game. That. Actually, yeah, with Melee in mind, I was just going to say, one of the things I did like about this system, and again, was after the fact, I didn't have it right away, was the controller. I was honestly surprised how well it handled. And from that era when every single wireless controller had to have like a receiver, the Wavebird is still one of the best wireless controllers, easily. It's still just so solid, feels so good in your hands.
The Wavebird felt like you actually had a piece of technology in your hand. Like it felt like it was heavier than most controllers, which means it was filled with, like, technology and not just a hollow shell of the minimization of the controller, right? And I think it would actually, the receiver for that was actually really good. It was a frequency. Like, I feel like you could pick like 4 channels.
I think it was like 20 channels, and there was a dial on the bottom of the receiver box and on the bottom of the GameCube controller, and you had to line it up.
And that's just it, though. That controller was, like you said, filled with tech, but unlike, I'm going to say it, unlike, say, this thing, it was filled with tech that saw constant use.
Well, I wouldn't even say it was
That's
super
what I was looking
complex.
for.
I would say it push against that. It didn't have a lot of tech. It was almost dumbed down compared to everything else that was going on. I mean, did that even have like a really big rumble feature in it? Like, I just remember it being like super solid. The rumble was built in like the little thing in the back, but it wasn't like what you had. Remember, the Xbox had the Duke controller, that giant one you
Yeah,
had to
the
have Duke
burger.
hand
Yeah,
for, right? And then the PS3. Or sorry, I'm thinking the wrong one. PS2. I mean, that was always a solid one for a lot of people. Some people
yeah.
didn't like having the dual analog in the center. Like, this was offset. It handled well, and it handled so well that people wore out their joysticks. I don't know how many times that I don't know if you had to, but I had to replace just the joysticks on these things, the C stick and the main
Mhm.
joystick.
All of us did.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's because of Smash players. Let's be real. That's why. That's
Well,
why.
also Mario Party. Let's be
Mario.
honest.
Oh
Some of
yeah,
those games
Mario
that are like
Party.
jank with that joystick on there,
Yeah,
it's real
Mario Party
bad.
ruins controllers and friendships. Keep that in mind. A few other things that come out on the 18th. A timeless treasure, Chrono Cross, came out on the PlayStation in Japan in 1999. Uh, uh,
To this day, still one of the top 10 gaming intros.
oh,
Period.
really? Okay, you like that intro?
The music was solid. Just the music was solid. The way that the way that the scenes were used, the way that the cutscenes were used to actually set up the game without
Yeah.
spoiling too much of it, incredibly well done.
That I mean, I feel like this is a whole new episode we could talk about Chrono Cross because like my theory in that game is it was like designed to be like it's about color and it's about song, right? But because it was like it was like lightly implied those were like a lot of the themes in the back. So, but we can talk about it at a different time. A
Yeah,
couple things that came out.
I would love to hear your thoughts on that sometime. Just because I played Chrono Trigger, but not
Yeah,
Chrono Cross, and I
yeah,
know that that game didn't quite live up to a lot of people's expectations.
yeah. It's definitely what was like. If I thought it, Chrono Cross to me was like one of those games where like if I didn't consider it as a sequel, it would be good. But the fact that it was riding on the shoulders of Trigger, I think that's what a lot of people were like, I don't know, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So expectation. A couple other games here I want to mention: Castlevania Judgment on the Wii in 2008, which was like one of
Woof.
your first arena fighters on the Wii. And then Splinter Cell on the Xbox in 2002. That's a classic one. I think that defined that genre of like lights and shadow and the stealth in the stealth genre. And then Pokemon Scarlet and Violet on the Switch a couple years ago in 2022. There's a couple here I want you to know, Nick, because I think these two are really close to you.
Yeah, which one are you gonna have me talk about first?
Hey, you choose, man.
uh,
We talk about it
uh,
eventually.
quick one that I wanted to mention was one that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I play a lot of Star Wars games, and one of my favorite series was the like Jedi Knight series. So in 2003, Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy came out, and I just remember really loving Jedi Outcast and getting to play as Kyle Katarn and running around and going into the console to remove any of the limiters so you could actually like chop like the bodies up, like actually take an arm off with the lightsaber because that's what made sense. But Jedi Academy was the follow up. You actually got to have a character that was fully voiced. So you could choose their background a little bit and play through that story. But the big thing for me was I remember you could actually choose as you're going through what your lightsaber could be. If you wanted to dual wield, if you wanted a double ended one, if you wanted just a single one. But that just really stood out to me. And the multiplayer suite. I remember playing that game a lot and running around and just doing force push and pull and trying to send your friends off the map and having these epic like
Bye-bye!
duels. Yeah, these epic duels in the middle. Like it was super interesting. Like Chop says in the chat, it had a lot of interesting lore and weapons. It was just a very
Nice.
fun game that I felt like I always wished I would have had another follow up on. That was a little bit more like recent. We kind of get that with the Jedi Survivor, Jedi Outcast games, but just not as much with like the fun action of this era. This is like early to mid aughts kind of game. The other one I want to mention was in 2014, game series that, again, very near and dear to my heart. This is when Dragon Age Inquisition released. And At some point, I'm sure we're going to talk about Veilguard. It's one of the games I'm playing right now. I have thoughts. I'm a big fan of the Dragon Age series, a big fan of BioWare games, as we will talk about even more in this list for foreshadowing. But Inquisition was actually one of the ones I really liked. And one thing I'll say is every single Dragon Age release has some kind of controversy. There's never been like a full like acceptance of any game that's released. There's always been pluses or minuses, or people that hate it, people that love it. So Inquisition was one that a lot of people didn't like. It came out at a time when everything had to be open world, and everyone was kind of burnt out on that, even in 2014. And again, there's going to be some detractors with that, but I had a lot of fun playing it when it was one of the reasons I really was interested in what happened in Veilguard, a continuation of the story. Or so I thought.
I'm all for it. Dragon Age is one of those games where like you play it because the story and you're involved in said story, right? So
Right. And like I said, foreshadowing, we'll talk about my time with Veilguard. I'm sure it is the complete opposite of that, which is so weird for me to talk about it. But it's one of the few games that I still have a signed copy of. I remember meeting the devs at PAX one year. It was really cool. Got to talk to them. I went full in on the tarot card experience. Nice. It was so cool to just see the art of it. But yeah, it's one of my favorite games at the time.
At the time.
It did win Game of the Year. If people don't remember that controversy about Dragon Age winning Game of the Year, then check out the Game of the Year stuff for 2014. We're probably going to talk about some Game of the Year stuff. Speaking of,
was it 2014? Game of the Year in 2014?
Yeah, it was 2014. There wasn't a lot of other games that year, but there was, at least if I remember it, one other title that a lot of people were talking about. Maybe chat would want to look it up.
All right. Let's see here. Well, about this is kind of interesting because I believe the next one here is just the reiteration of the next Nintendo release.
Wii. Speaking of the Wii,
yeah. So on the 19th of November in 2006, just the day after, but 6 years later, is that what I'm seeing here in GameCube? 5 years later, the Wii came out, which is like the most sold console at the time. This thing sold like hotcakes for sure. A couple things that were released with that was Twilight Princess. Wii Sports were released on the same day. I think Wii Sports came with it, right? So I guess that
it was sense. A pack-in with most of them, but that is also why Wii Sports is one of the best-selling games of all time. Yeah, it's because of it selling with the console, like no joke.
That'd be a sneaky way to like get your ratings up. Like, oh yeah, it's just package this game with it. It'd be the best-selling game because the console sells.
That was a discussion around the time of launch. It's just like, well, it's kind of inflating the numbers, but I mean, a lot of people came in to get that. I mean, the bowling game that was in there, that was like one of the demo units we had, was just people playing Wii bowling all the time when they come into the store.
It was very inexpensive, and it was like it came packed with like a bunch of different games. So it was like one of the, and when people buy the Wii, they want to play the controller, right? They don't want to have a typical gaming experience, like a traditional one, I would say. So Wii Sports is perfect for that.
Oh yeah.
Well, not even that. I mean, just think about it. One of the biggest selling points about the original Wii was you can plug in your GameCube controllers and play your GameCube games. So you had the entire previous system library and an entire new library, and you can plug in your controllers, and some of the games let you use your GameCube controllers on them as a viable option. So those Wavebirds we were just talking about,
still can use them.
Still use them.
Yep. No, that was one of the biggest things I really respected with Nintendo during that era, was that they always like paid respects to the last generation, right, of their console, which added so much value.
Both hardware and software backward compatibility.
Correct. Yeah, correct. So a few other things that came out that day, the Saboteur on the PS3 and 360 back in 2009. Blaze Blue or Blaz Blue, depending on which region of the country you're at. Calamity Trigger came out in the arcade in 2008 in Japan. Shenmue 3 came out on the PC and the PS4.
Oh, Shenmue 3.
In 2019. And the first Hitman, codename 47, came out on the PC in the year 2000, which I do remember buying that game and playing it on my PC, on my 3DFX computer.
I think Andre and I are pretty good friends. Yeah, my exasperated Shenmue 3, I really wanted that game to be good. And it's not just because it's just like a Dragon or Yakuza. It's not because of that, before you call me out on it. It was the precursor. It is very similar, I get it, but I really wanted an ending of that game story. I thought it was going to be so good. I have the steelbook for it. I paid extra to get it early. Like I got on that um, Kickstarter for that as quick as possible. The crowdsourcing. I don't even remember if it was Kickstarter, but I wanted that game to be so good, and it was
So
just
my
not.
my question for you guys and Andre too is that do you think it could have been better if it wasn't crowdfunded?
I wouldn't say that's. I wouldn't say the in my opinion. Let me just say it that way. In my opinion, I don't believe that the crowdsourcing was the issue. I think it was a misunderstanding of the direction and, like Andre said, overhyped.
Mm.
Because depending who's at the reins with that, like the publisher, whoever, it could have easily meddled in that. We could have got a different thing. I think just the expectation behind it was kind of working against it.
I don't think it would exist. Yeah, Blue says it. I don't think it would exist. Yeah, I don't think like aside from the hardcore like Shenmue players, like who knew about that because it was so far like away from two, right? It's like unless you played the previous games, you'd be like, "What is this?" You know what I'm
And,
saying?
and even then, it's like just the simple fact that there was so there was so much time between the games too.
Hmm.
Well, and that was there's a whole bunch of reasons for that, so I can't fault him wanting to revisit. You should toss Andre's quote back up there. By the time Shenmue 3 came out, we had much better games. So it was dated when it did come out. It was kind of
Yeah.
holding to these
Yeah,
older style and older mechanics,
yeah.
things that, like Andre so eloquently pointed out, we had Yakuza 0, which is like one of the best games in the entire series, if not the best. It is peak. It's
Like
hard to be compared to that.
by the time Shenmue 3 came out, we got Yakuza 0. What they could have done was literally taken Yakuza 0 and just literally took the skeleton of Yakuza 0, put Shenmue 3 on that, and
They're
it could
different. They're different dev teams, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Like
here's the thing
seriously,
though, like
they could have gone with that kind of formula and we're just off to the races.
maybe like Yu Suzuki had a vision of like I really wanted to make Shenmue 3 earlier, and so he wanted to stay true to the when he created 2 at the time, like
That's fair.
stay true to that. So I'm getting this off Andre's comment, but he didn't want to modernize it, and I think like in a way that's kind of cool. Like, but like I don't think that was relayed effectively through the audience.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
like if he wants to make a retro game to honor the Shenmue formula of in the year early 2000s, you have to tell people that. Otherwise, people are like, "This is like so weird,"
Yeah,
you know?
it's handling the expectations. It's
Yeah,
not
exactly. That's
communicating
exactly
that,
what it is.
and like Andre said, it was a older style of game that people were not understanding. By the time it came out, everything else around it had changed so significantly. It really shone a light on how those things were dated. It's kind of the same thing, almost not so much in mechanics, but what happened with Duke Nukem Forever. By the time that finally came out, they may have tried to make the game they wanted to make, but it was stuck in the past in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
there's only so far you can go to try to keep it in its original essence, and then have to balance it with like the context of the time it finally releases. It's tough. It's unfair, maybe in a sense, but that's just what it is. If you don't tell people what it's going to be about, or
That's true.
effectively communicate in your marketing, yeah, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of expectations, I feel like Nicholas should reveal the next game that came out this day back in 1998.
Also, shout out to Saboteur. Thank you for bringing that up. Before we get away from that, one of the
No,
best
the
art
Saboteur. No,
mechanics.
just kidding.
Yeah, one of the best art mechanics as you get more of the city free, as you like free more of the city, it turns to
Mhm.
color from black and white.
Oh
Really
yeah,
cool
I
art
forgot about
direction.
that.
If people don't remember that, check it out. It was just really cool style of the time, and I just remember it didn't get enough like love back then. Some of the mechanics aren't as great, but
No.
that I just remember sticking out as something that was really cool. That's why I
Here's
wanted to.
fun fact before you jump into the next thing. I every time the Saboteur is brought up in the store, right? Somebody was always like, "Yeah, this is a game that they would talk about the Saboteur or close to it, but what they really wanted to buy was the Mercenaries." That's the problem
Yeah,
with that
yeah,
game.
yeah. It's a little tough. Plus, I remember there was some kind of like insert inside the thing too that was like a boudoir like ticket kind of thing that's in the game. It was weird. Uh, on this day, the 19th, in 2000, wow, we read the wrong one. In 1998 for the PC, the original Half-Life released on PC.
The
Um,
grandfather.
grandfather. That game for me, I didn't play a lot of the original game. I remember all of the community made games that sprung off that, the stuff that kind of defined that early era of the internet for me, at least. So you had, Blue Shift, all the other multiplayer stuff like Counter Strike. A lot of my Counter Strike time I talked on a previous pod about was the original Counter Strike that came right after Half Life released.
Mhm.
So Half Life for me is kind of like Half Life 2, as I mentioned, huge love of mine. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But Half Life 1 for me is more so I just kind of associated with Counter Strike, and that's what it was for me. But to think it released in 1998 makes me feel old. And I wasted so many years playing that game.
Oh
I
my
don't know
god,
about
this
you
is
two.
26 years old. Blech. Gross.
Yeah, yeah. So did you either of you play the original Half Life?
No.
I did. It was one of the games to play on the PC. It was to me one of those games that wasn't like I think my first experience was it like before like when you played a first person shooter it was like Doom or Heretic where it was like go to point A to point B, right? And then that's it. Maybe you get a key, right? Half Life 2 was a little bit different, or Half Life was a little bit different, just because like one, it. I don't know if if I'm saying this right, but it didn't feel like that. You're a corridor shooter, right? It felt like you could explore to an extent. Like it was one of the first times I ever felt like I was like, wow, I'm in this like world, right?
Yeah.
But it was I don't know maybe because I'm just like it's just so long ago, but I do remember feeling like man I'm like I'm trapped in this place,
Yeah.
but and it felt good like I felt like I was here.
It was one of those games that people really felt like they were sucked into that world in an FPS
Hmm.
space, which
Yeah,
was a little unheard of at the time. I think, and 98, we're talking like there's some bangers like StarCraft, that was Resident Evil 2. I think, oh shoot, like Banjo Kazooie, Fallout 2. Like there's some big games in that year. I think like OG Baldur's Gate. But this one, the reason it leapt into so many people's minds, it was really known for its innovative and like exciting storytelling that like really drew you
yeah,
in.
I think that's
Yeah.
what
Uh,
it was.
and despite like you can go back and look at it, despite some like real jankiness with like the character movements and stuff, what they did with voice acting and scanning people's faces to get them into the game, and try to make a rudimentary look, like it was surprising to be able to be pulled into the world and have that much immersion. And at the time, it blew people's minds. That's why it stuck out so much, even before you got to all the like the multiplayer suite and online stuff. But I do know you can't play the like original Steam version on like OG hardware anymore. You have to have an original copy. So like that's one of the reasons that original box is still like if you can get the bigger, I think the bigger box version of it. I remember it being larger.
Yeah, it was a
But
bigger
like that
box.
that one's still kind of worth some money.
Yeah, and wasn't Half Life also released in Xbox? Or was
It
that Half Life
eventually
2?
came out, yeah, it was on, well, Half-Life came out on the PS2.
Okay.
I remember there was a PS2 release of Half Life. I don't remember when that came out. I don't think it was at the same time because I mean the PS2 didn't launch until what was it 2000,
Something
something
like
like
that.
that.
Yeah.
So later, but yeah, that game super awesome. Really kind of blew people's minds, and to think it's that old now makes me feel older.
Um.
It literally, like thinking about it. You and I were talking about this recently. I'm about to hit a milestone birthday, and Half Life 2 is literally half my life. Like it is that scary
mm,
that that game is that old.
okay. Okay. I don't know what happened here, but I think the next on the 20th here. Moving on to the next one. I did have a date on here, but I don't see it. But I think the Wii U came out 5 years afterwards of the Wii, which is not that long if you think about it. I got the wrong caption also. Great.
November 18th, 2012.
There you go. What's that? Let's see here. Yeah, 6 years later.
Mhm.
Yeah, it came out 6 years later. So
Oh, the Wii U, the
so
failed console.
here's the thing: when people are wondering, like this is one of the I guess, best examples of marketing failures because nobody knew what it was. Everybody thought it was a handheld, right? So, but yeah, it's on this day. On this day we got Zelda Skyward Sword on the regular Wii. Came out in 2011. Let's see here. Dynasty Warriors 8 Empires. A classic here. A classic, I hate to say that. Came out on the PS3, 4, Xbox One in 2014 in Japan. Also, the famous Rock Band came out back in 2007 for the PS3 and 360.
So many hours playing Rock Band.
Yeah, and I think it was like this was post Guitar Hero. Rock Band came out after Guitar Hero as well.
Yeah, we actually got a drum set.
Yep. And a little fun note here. It was this 1985 Microsoft Windows version 1.01 released in the US. Was that the first time we got Windows?
That was the DOS version, the first full release in the US. This was before, like all the like other releases that eventually came out for it, but this was the 1.01 release.
Okay, because it's funny because when I know DOS a little bit because of my dad and his job back in the early 90s, and I remember him getting 311, which was like the first one of the first Windows OSs to be released.
I hear 311, I just think of the band.
yeah. And hopefully that's not what they're named after. But yeah, I do remember I was like, oh my gosh, this is a game changer. Like I don't have to type in CD /directory all the time,
Right?
Like, so this is kind of crazy, like the UI and everything. I thought that was it's just like you kids don't know how good you have it because we have experienced the dark ages.
Old man shouts at cloud.
Yeah. And then Ace, I'll let you grab the next one.
All right. So let's see. After, oh, of course, I'm grabbing the next one.
I mean, I feel like it was suitable.
You put on the hat.
Yep.
You're called to service.
Yep. 1991, first Japanese release, mind you, of the original Fatal Fury, the one that in a lot of ways started it all for SNK fighting games. Like, literally the first game in the series itself was called Fatal Fury, the King of Fighters.
Yeah.
Not too many people knew that 3 years later there was actually going to be a full-on King of Fighters game, the first in that series. But if you actually try and tie the backstories of the characters in the games together, yeah, the very first King of Fighters tournament, what would technically be KOF 91, is Fatal Fury. It's Terry, Andy, and Joe making their way through Geese Howard's boys all the way up to the point where Terry knocks that bastard off the roof of his, off the penthouse.
Very 80s.
Exactly, and that's the thing, Fatal Fury. The team that worked on Fatal Fury were, of course, ex Capcom, and the big thing that they wanted to do with Fatal Fury, in particular with Terry, was actually making a main character who was like a homage of 80s and 90s action heroes. So that's why you got the blonde American dude with the jeans, the vest, and of course the trucker cap.
Yeah. I want to bring up what Jago said here. So Jago wrote, SNK was poaching Capcom talent. So it's funny that you bring this up, Jagos, because this is why in the credits you have some weird code names for a lot of the developers, because they didn't want competing companies knowing who they were so they can poach them. So if you ever beat a Capcom game, you'll see like some names like HD Master or whatever. Like those aren't, those are people that work there, but they're code names, so they didn't know who they were, so they wouldn't get poached. So
I mean, Bengus and Akimat. Perfect example.
You go.
Oh, Aki, man.
I would say my only contribution to Fatal Fury, aside from being one of my first Super Nintendo games, was the first time I encountered the arcade was a roller skating rink in Chicago called Rainbow Roller Skating Rink. And to me, it was weird because it was in two planes. And there's a foreground and background, unlike Street Fighter, right? Mm-hmm. So that was the unique thing about that game. To me, and it was also one of the loudest arcade machines. And so
yes,
the music was catchy, the hits were powerful. But that was my first experience with that, and I was always like, wow, who is SNK? Because all the cool games are coming from Capcom. So this is one of the first times I encountered SNK.
Yeah, funny enough, I was just watching a video earlier. I had on the background that was talking about like the Neo Geo and the history of SNK. I didn't know that the person, one of the original creators and developers of Street Fighter 2, left, went to SNK and made Fatal Frame. And Fatal Frame was meant as a true like answer to Street Fighter 2, because Street Fighter 2 had released in the arcade earlier that year. I want to say like early that year. And then
Mhm.
Fatal Frame came out, and then I just remember like those two like head to head, everyone was talking about that, because as we know, Street Fighter 2 had like so many releases, like turbos, championship editions, all this stuff, but Fatal Frame was doing like full on sequels, numbers, that kind of thing.
Jago, you're all they're funny. It says Jago said, "Think I was driving all over America and I find SNK in pizza parlors or other places and see their
Mhm.
infamous cabinet, the red striped one, right? Kind of like
The
Fatal Fury had
MVS.
over there. Yeah, the
The
MVS cabinet,
100 Mega Shock.
and
Yeah.
then you can select which games you want before you put in your quarter. That's a classic, man. That's so cool.
Well, it was just so crazy too. Like SNK, when they made the Neo Geo, it was originally only for very specific places as a rental thing. It wasn't available to the mass market when it first
Yeah.
came out. Like that was crazy. It was a really cool idea. The thought, because all those games at the time were talking about taking the arcade game and shipping it to console. That's what you have
Yeah.
like Street Fighter 2 going to console. What SNK did was like you get to take the arcade game to home, like the console,
Yeah.
to a console
It's
instead of like
crazy.
the other way around. Like trying to say that, because we always talk about like, oh, did it play like it did in the arcade?
Yep.
You know, is
Yep.
it as good as that? You had
That
to
that
pay for it though.
was that in your console wars book? Because I feel like was a big thing back in like the 80s and 90s, is like the home port of it, to
That
be
wasn't in
as
the
close to the
console
arcade.
wars. I will grab the video link and send it to you so you can share it. It's very interesting to hear about the history of it and how that console was just like very unique for people who don't know at the time too. Like when that console released, it was prohibitively expensive,
600
and
bucks at
it
least.
was, yeah, I think it was like the equivalency was like $1,400 nowadays. Imagine
Yeah.
we were complaining about the PS5 Pro. Imagine
Yeah,
having to pay
exactly.
$1,400 for this thing. You might as well
Yeah.
buy an arcade cabinet. It's cheaper to do
That
that.
shit was rough.
Yeah. I feel like that one meme where like they're all getting hung up and the guy's like, first time, it's like Neo Geo
Yeah,
to the PS4
yeah,
Pro,
yeah.
PS5 Pro, right? And Nick, go ahead and tell us this next one is pretty big in the gaming world.
Yeah, another one. Again, we were talking about earlier. Like one of my loves is Bioware and who they used to be. Can make a lot of conversation about that. But on the 20th in 2007 was the release of my beloved Mass Effect 1. This game was and still is massive for me. So this is a big game for me. I have my signed copy here that I have with the original slipcover. And in honor of this, I did, and I'll put it on towards the end, bring my Mass Effect helmet that I got with the Legendary Edition that lights up if you are Paragon or Renegade. Huge nerd. I
Cool.
apologize to call that out. Uh, I loved being able to choose and have so much stuff like tied to the decisions you made. I love sci-fi. I love the soundtrack in this game. This
Jagos.
yeah, big sigh. But Mass Effect changed a lot of things for me. And that's when, like in 2007, especially, I'd only had my 360 for a little bit, and this was something I like really latched onto. It was my first like real big experience diving into a Bioware game, and then I go from there and check out so many stuff. It really is a major nexus point in my gaming history, and I think it was pretty important in the industry as a whole. It changed a lot of things and storytelling, especially. But again, as someone who's a huge sci-fi fan and watched a lot of movies like space orchestral soundtracks, like that game hit a lot of notes for me. It's one that I know that I explained to my wife very early on, like, just so you know, I'm very obsessed about this game series. I'll probably talk about it a lot. It doesn't help that her last name is also Shepherd. Not to dox her, but it was just,
Subliminal.
yeah, so it was really funny because I remember that some of her coworkers at the time, when they found out I was a huge Mass Effect fan, some of the characters like Rex and calling her Shepherd, and she's like, "Why do they keep saying that to me?" And it's like, let me tell you the ways. But yeah, this one's
have
huge
a
for me.
seat.
I don't know if you two played it at all, but I can honestly talk hours about it and who you romance, what the story decisions you made. The fact that you could kill off a character and you wouldn't show up in the other two games, as we find out later on, was
Like Dragon
pretty
Age.
crazy.
So
Well,
I don't have a lot of experience with Mass Effect. I know the hype. I think if I had it, I think the reason why I did not have a lot of history with Mass Effect is because one, I'm a huge fantasy person, not sci-fi specifically, and I heard the two were like you pick it's like blue pill or red pill, right? Mass Effect or Dragon Age, and I chose Dragon Age, and so I kind of stuck with that. But I am not opposed to playing Mass Effect. It's just sci-fi for me takes a little bit longer for me to get a hook on if I have to like choose between the two.
and that's perfectly fine. Like
Yeah.
everyone's going to have different things that they get into, and honestly, like if you go back and play the first one, especially after playing the follow-up titles, the first one is a slog. Like it is slower, it
Mm.
takes a while to get into. I can understand why some people bounced off it, but that's what made Mass Effect 2 so much better and why it was such a peak. For me, it's like playing Uncharted and then Uncharted 2. Like
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
was just better, so it's harder to go back because you know where it goes and you know how much they learn from the process of all of it.
I
Yeah,
do have
and
the
like some people were
legendary
saying in the
edition.
chat, like the fact that they haven't made a Jade Empire 2, maybe
Oh,
they
come on,
shouldn't
man.
at this point because of
Yeah,
what's happened to the company.
yeah.
I'd be afraid to see that release. Like, I don't know if it's going to be a live service Jade Empire.
Oh,
Kill
stop!
me
Shut
now.
up.
Yeah.
No, don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
Just give Jade Empire to Platinum Games. I'll take care. I'll take that.
Well, and so I mean, Jade Empire is awesome. I love it. It took what I loved about Knights of the Old Republic, which is another fantastic game series that I love, and they made the combat more engaging and
Jacobs.
put a really cool like lore on it too, like digging into that like East Asian background and all the different lore that you can pull in from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jago, sorry. To be honest, I'm not giving them ideas. That is somewhere, I'm sure, in one of their dev journals. It was live service Jade Empire.
There's like a scroll in the BioWare office.
Yeah,
The new Jade
it's
Empire.
pinging right now.
Yeah, it's all dusty. But that's awesome, man. I hope the next one is fantastic. And you know, I only wish the best for these franchises to succeed and do well. You know, so I think the one of the things that these developers are facing is that like if they make their last game so far away to their next game, or yeah, if they make their next game so far away from the last game, I feel like the expectation grows, which means like they're gonna be much more harsh on the game than they should be.
I
Versus like yeah,
I don't know if I 100% agree. I mean, you look at something like Rockstar, and the games keep getting pushed back, delayed. The hype is still just as high, and they deliver. I think it's the landing point that's the biggest issue. So, talking like Dragon Age specifically, again, I'm sure we'll do a pod about this and talk about our feelings around, or my feelings and your significant others. But it's something that game is not a Dragon Age game. It took so long, but the choices they made, the dev they decided to do, where they decided to take the game and make its bones is the bigger issue. The time isn't the issue so much for me. It's just, do they stick the landing? And more often than not, they don't. That's why we have that feeling behind it. So
yeah,
the next Mass Effect, as long as it doesn't do what they did with Veilguard, I will be cautiously optimistic.
yeah. I mean, yeah. It's like I said. I just hope it's good for you guys since I have no you know.
I hope it's good for you nerds.
No, I just hope it's good for your expectations because I know there's a lot of writing on the coattails, right? Like it's like if they say like it's whenever a new fighting game gets released. Like if Killer Instinct 2 gets announced, I'd be like, okay, it's been a long time. I got to see if this is good. You know what I'm saying? Like I'll be like extra like serious about it. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So, but yeah,
Next day.
we'll move on here. On the 21st, what do we got?
Nintendo Week.
Oh yeah. The 21st, we got the Nintendo DS releases in 2004, with Metroid Prime Hunters the same day. Is that a GameCube version or the I thought that was a
No,
Wii U
Hunters
game.
was the DS version.
The DS version. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. But way back in 1987, relevant to a recent events here, Mike Tyson's Punch Out came out on NES in Japan.
Oh, Mike. Why, Mike?
Fight Tyson in the Dream Bout. And then the Super Famicom releases in Japan along with Super Mario World the same day. So that is very iconic, that Super Famicom. And I'm glad that you made a distinguished version of Famicom, not SNES. I appreciate that.
I
Attention to
worked in a
detail.
retro video game store.
Yeah.
I make the difference.
Yeah, computer. And then Pokemon Alpha, Sapphire, Omega, Ruby came out on a 3DS in 2014 as well. But yeah, and then let's see, what's this last one? I can't read that. What does that say?
You having trouble? You having trouble reading that?
I can't read that game.
In the year 2000, chat. One of the biggest disasters in gaming history launched on the 21st of November, and that is Daikatana. For those of you who don't know what Daikatana is, if you know what Doom is, you know that one of the two creators is John Romero. John Romero left to form Ironstorm Studios and wanted to make the latest greatest game, and came up with this idea of Daikatana, which is Japanese for large sword. It is infamous because it is definitely one of the biggest disasters in gaming history. It was one of those things that, like, for me, I remember the marketing campaign. I don't know if you guys do, the orange poster that was put everywhere that even John Romero hated.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't there like three characters? Like there was like a big buff dude, normal guy, and then woman. Right, like from what I remember, like there's like the three key characters that were showcasing.
It released, well after when it was supposed to. It was pushed back. They switched game engines halfway through production.
I'll do it.
Yeah. So beyond having a difficult, John Romero and the 10% made. Thank you, Jagos. So constant delays, switching all that, bad marketing. When it actually released, we had just talked about this, and that's why it's super funny that we brought it up before. But when it released, it was graphically and mechanically outdated the moment it launched.
Yeah.
It was releasing at a time, we said the year 2000, right? Half-Life was already out by that point.
Yeah.
So it could not live up to it. I mean, the thing had bugs, poor AI, lackluster gameplay, had a giant budget. I'm sitting here, had a budget of 30 million at the time, but it only sold 40,000 copies.
That's crazy.
Oh,
that is, oh man, that's painful. That's probably why I couldn't pronounce it, just because I probably erased it from my memory banks. For some
flashbacks.
For some reason, I was like, Shogo? Shogo? Every time I read it, I was like, Shogo? I don't know why, because Shogo was the shooter at the time in my brain for that era. So kind of interesting. Anyway, and the next day, days are getting a little bit better here. On the 22nd of November in 1994, the Sega Saturn releases in Japan, the direct competitor to the PlayStation. So, arguably, I would say the better console between the two, in my opinion. Well, we can talk about that every time in our console war podcast episode.
Well, I love it just for its ad campaign.
What was the slogan?
Oh, well, I mean, the U.S. one was different than the Japanese one.
Yeah.
The
Sega Sanchiro. I love Sega Sanchiro.
Yeah, Sanchiro.
Yeah. But what was there was a quote in the American version, which was pretty catchy too, from what I recall. So.
I just remember about trying to get to Saturn, again, the Rings of Saturn.
Sanshiro.
Yeah, Sanshiro. That was the best part of that.
I think they made like a sequel recently of like his son taking his mantle. We can.
That's that awesome.
Somewhere. Yeah. A few other things that were relevant to me during this day was KI Killer Instinct released in the Xbox One in 2013. I also called Xbox One during that time my Killer Instinct machine because that was the only reason why I bought it. And then also came out that year, the Xbox One. So that's why.
There you go.
The Sega Saturn ad, speaking of, was all the people with shaved heads that said "Head for Saturn." in the
I love
US.
that. That's so American.
Toss that. I need to toss that in the Discord because
That's
these
great.
are awesome. I'll do that after
That's
stream.
great.
Yeah.
Couple things here. In Unreal Tournament, I'd say one of the most popular first-person shooters released in 1999 on the PC. I think one of the first games to release on the Unreal Engine, right, during the time, and hence the Unreal
Yeah.
Tournament.
Yeah, that was I think they made the actual engine and then that was built on it. The engine was released because of the game.
Because of the game, yeah, and that's why it was Unreal Tournament, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and I just remember them like they were BFFs with 3FX, and they were like talking about Unreal all the time at the moment. So
I just remember Unreal releasing and just like the fervor around it for multiplayer maps. It was kind of the same thing that happened with Doom a few years before then. Like everyone trying to hop online to get the shareware version of that, and then
mhm,
Unreal comes out and everyone has to play like multiplayer arena shooters. This was the progenitor of
that was
all
the
of that.
time, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, that was like 1999, and that time was I felt like there was a lot of first person like multiplayer arena shooters, so from what I recall.
It was
Like what is
it was
that
like
like?
it was like a mini resurgence of first person shooters because in 95 and 96 they were still pretty big too, like with Doom and Rise of the Triad, Hexen, Rednex
Yeah. But
Rampage.
the focus was like arena. They were like
Yeah.
it wasn't really the story like what is that like Planescape? No, that wasn't Planescape. What is that one? The big Planet Side was the other one.
Planet
That was
Side.
like yeah, it was a
Planet
big
side.
one. Yeah, there was a bunch of those. Like they were all over the place, but they were all multiplayer combat based.
This
Uh
was the first one I remembered like that really defined what arena shooters were because it was fast paced and it felt like you were
mhm,
always on like ice skates
yeah.
and jumping way too high, like someone had messed with like the gravity on it. It was all about just
Tribes. There it
fast,
is.
frenetic action behind it. Yeah, tribes.
Tribes was the one. I thought that was cool. Fun story. I played Quake on a giant monitor in GameWorks, where it was like a 2 tier, 6 player, maybe 8 player setup, where it was like there
Are
you
you
play
saying you
Quake.
were the wizard?
No, 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 no. But like every time you won, your chair would go up to the second level, which was the coolest
What?
feeling. Yeah, it was like you win, and then your chair would zzz all the way to the second floor, and you're like,
Oh,
We need to.
I remember seeing
Oh, we need to bring those back. Please
it
tell
was
me you can find a
I
video
know
or
it's
something
so
to that.
cool. A couple of the things that came out during that day: Zelda: Link Between Worlds on the 3DS in 2013, which is the sequel to what is that? The Super Nintendo one, I think.
Mhm.
Link to the past.
Link to the Past. Yep. And then Tekken Hybrid on the PS3 in 2011, which was I think their attempt of like moving to. Wow, this is a weird one. It was like their jump from 2 to 3 graphically and also gameplay wise. It included like Tekken Tag Tournament, and then the like Tekken 3, I think, but remastered or something like that.
I
Didn't
think
it have
so.
it had a pretty big roster, didn't it? I remember it was
It was a tag tournament roster. That's why it was
yeah.
huge. Yeah. It was like the melee of like Tekken at the time, but it was
Yeah.
like this one was specifically for the PS3. There wasn't like an arcade release for this one. You're gonna say something, Ace?
Oh no, I was just saying yeah,
This
Tekken
also
Hybrid was definitely one of those weird ones.
and this all it also came with a copy of the Tekken movie at the time, which not the
Oh,
real life one, but the CG one, the good
oh,
one.
okay. I was
Yeah,
gonna
the
say, oh
good one,
no.
yeah, the good one, yeah. There's a couple other things here, Nick, that I think you wanted to share.
Well, you mentioned which console?
The XB1,
The Xbox One in
yeah.
2013, which means in 2005 the Xbox 360 was released in the US. I remember I was working at GameStop at the time. That was one of my first years there. And I remember when that console came out, I wanted it, couldn't get it right away, got it afterwards. That was when I was able to really buy it with my own money. Like my own like college like earning money. So I really got into that console. I just remember so many weird accessories for that thing, so many games. Again, Mass Effect was huge on that console for me. Remember the original UI for that with the blades?
The blades,
Yeah, the
and
blades.
also the clip for the hard drive.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The clip-on hard drive and
That was crazy.
jeez.
I just remember I mean I was playing PS2 like religiously at the time, and then anybody that had a 360, the jump from the PS2 to the 360, I was like, wow, this is the future, man. Like
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
yeah, it was
And we had
crazy.
mentioned it before, but I remember very clearly when we got the kiosks in at the store, it was Call of Duty 2 was on
Mm.
it, and that was blowing people's minds. That's what people came in and saw in the demo units. Like, this is insane. The graphical jump. We've never seen anything like this. War is so
So
real,
many
you
so
know.
many
Yeah,
characters, yeah.
so many characters, so many pixels and bits. Um, but on the same day in 1996, a game that's near and dear to my heart, Command and Conquer Red Alert, the first one for PC. Back in the day when I first joined GameStop, I always told people when they asked me what kind of games I played, I pretty much only played RTSs in high
Oh, really?
school. Like when I had my PC, I tried a bunch of different stuff. I did have consoles. I played console games, but what I really played a lot of were RTSs, and Red Alert was one of my favorites. If you don't remember how much of a banger this title was, you need to go back and check it out. It had the full motion videos with famous
Oh,
actors
yeah.
and
Mhm.
like hammy acting over the top. So
Tim
funny.
Curry was in it.
Yes, he was, and he's one of the
Nice.
best parts about it. You need to go back and rewatch some of those, or replay the game. They did come out with a remastered version that kind of upscaled the video a little bit.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, I played that way too much,
Yeah,
and that one
Red
definitely stood
Alert
out.
was
For me.
Red Alert was dope, and I actually played a lot of Red Alert Retaliation on the PS1.
Yeah,
Nice.
I
My
just
my
remember.
favorite.
Oh, sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was gonna say my favorite, aside from Tiberian Sun. That's the third one, right? I enjoyed that, but I actually liked Command and Conquer Generals a lot.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, it was like the tail
not
end
as
of
many
like.
people say generals, but
I
it's not a
know,
bad
it's just
game.
weird, right? I think that was the direct competitor to Warcraft 3 at the time,
Oh yeah, good
and
luck.
so yeah, and that's why I was like, I know for a first CNC game, it was okay, you know.
Yeah, no, Red Alert. For me, it was besides the full motion videos, it was the Hell March song that you just remember from the opening
Yeah,
thing. Like, still to this day, it's on my Spotify.
Yes.
Like, I still listen to
yeah,
it.
it's almost as if like personality, or those personalities in the videos like help carry the game, right? Because Generals had none of that from what I recall, and or very little of it. So it's like so it's hard to remember anything,
It
right? But
became
like
more modernized, and it was of the times. For
yeah,
me, Red Alert, there was nothing
but there
quite
was no
like it.
charm, is what I'm getting at. Like
Yeah,
there's no charm to it. So that's one
I
of
mean,
the
it's what
hooks.
for me, Red Alert's what put Westwood on my map. Westwood
Yeah,
Studios.
Command and Conquer at Westwood Studios, like that was. I played the first one and I really enjoyed that one too. So having those like just be a memory too, being the PC era as well.
Last day of the week.
All right, let's go. This is a big one. This is a big one. All right, 11/23. A bunch of stuff came out. So the first of all, we'll go back to what's on the screen here. World of Warcraft did come out in the PC in 2004, but a couple notable things before we forget. In 1996, Tamagotchi dedicated console releases in Japan, which is pretty cool. Animal Crossing Wild World on the DS in 2005 in Japan. My personal pick for this section was Splatterhouse on the PS3 in 2010. And then, you know what? I don't remember Gothic on the PC. What kind of game was that in 2001?
You never played Gothic on the
I don't
PC?
remember. I may have.
I'm gonna have to pull this up and send
Chat's
it
gonna
to
be
you.
like, "What the fuck, fake gamer, fake
You get it on
gamer."
GOG. It was one of those like third person action adventure. Reminded me a lot of just like Morrowind, but third person. I just remember it standing out because it was a little bit like dark fantasy at the time when there really wasn't a lot of it.
Hmm.
And it was definitely one of those like it kicked off an entire series. Like there was, I think I remember you might have played Arcania, which was like Gothic 3 or something like that.
Probably.
Uh, it was or no, that was Gothic 4 because Gothic 3
Oh
was
my
separate.
god,
Anyway,
what is this game?
yeah. Oh man, it
Jesus.
is just of the times. Just look at that
Yeah.
brown palette, and it's so good.
This looks like we have Witcher at home. That's what it looks like.
Look, it was it was released in 2001. It was rough.
Well, I mean, probably why in 2001 there was a lot of games competing for your attention, so I can see that. But yeah, there's some other stuff here, guys. I know you that you go ahead and feel free to cover them. Ace.
Well, I want Ace to talk about his game.
Yeah, just really quickly, November 23rd. Uh, this was another Japanese release, but November 23rd on the PS3 in 2016, we got Samurai Warriors: Spirit of Sanada. Now, this one was a spin-off from Samurai Warriors 4, but this one was built specifically to focus on the Warring States era of Japan as told through the viewpoint of the Sanada family, their patriarch, Masayuki. And of course, the main narrative of the game focused on the eventual rivalry between the brothers Yukimura and Nobuyuki. In this one, as you play, like you start the game, like you start the part of the story as the dad. You start as Masayuki. You start with him as he's like, a young adult, and you actually get to play as him as an older adult. But then when it switches over to Yukimura's portion of that later part of the history leading up to the siege of Osaka Castle, where he historically dies, you actually get to play Yukimura as a young buck. We're talking like maybe 12, 13. You basically get to play Kid Yukimura running around with a wooden version of his, signature cross-bladed spear. And then you get to play like older teen, like early 20s Yukimura, and then, full on adult Yukimura. So the character actually ages as you go through the game. And there's a lot of speculation that some of those same kinds of some of those same kinds of you know those same kinds of traits may actually be brought into play for Dynasty Warriors Origins, because you are starting, back at the beginning of that period with characters who are notably younger compared to their previous appearances, like Cao Cao, Guan Yu. You know, most of the major players there. But their first, I guess you could say, the first time they actually implemented that type of, game progression and that type of character progression was actually right here with Spirit of Sanada.
Hmm.
And of course, it also introduces one character that is pretty much stuck to the spin-offs, but should have been in a main title, that being Sasuke. But yeah, that's it for me for the 23rd.
All right, what else we got here, Nick?
Well, before we talk about the one on the screen, the only one, or unless you have a slide for the other one too.
No, I don't. There means I think there's Zelda, and then the other one for
Yeah. So in 1998, Zelda Ocarina of Time released on this day, and
big
on
one,
the 23rd.
huge.
Big, huge. One of the things on 64 I had to own. One of the ones that sold so many consoles, and one of the ones that I still regularly go back to play. So I mean, Ocarina of Time for me is my favorite Zelda game. For a while there, it was whatever Zelda game you tend to play first was the one you kind of gravitated towards as your favorite. That happened a lot when people came into the store and talked about it. But for me, it's still kind of Ocarina of Time. I haven't played all the way through the more recent ones. It's still great games from what I have played, but for me, it's just the nostalgia glasses are strong, and I just love the time travel in it, the music, the storytelling. It's fantastic to me.
I, it's the first time we saw Link in 3D, right? Link and Zelda in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
it's a big
You're
one.
right.
Like I would say, I would argue the reason why I bring that up is because like Final Fantasy VII is the first time we see a polygonal Final Fantasy, versus a 2D sprite. So I think it's a big jump. It hits a lot of people different when it jumps a generation in graphics, right? So
But to speak about the one on the screen right now, I know there were some people that responded in chat and had some takes on it. But the reason I really want to bring this up is not just because of my personal experience with it, but the milestone that it is in gaming's history when this game came out. There
Mhm.
was a couple online games at the time for sure, and one thing you can say about World of Warcraft is it improved on mechanics that were from other games. One of the big point of contentions that people had about this game when it first came out, it felt like they were cherry picking some of the like things from the different games that are out there, EverQuest and that kind of thing. But they did it better and they did it in a complete package. It wasn't just a game launch, but it's kind of a beginning of an entire era for like online multiplayer experiences. And that has become such a central part of our gaming culture today. I'm sure you two feel this. I'm sure chat feels this too. Like this was a pivot point for a lot of the industry. Its impact is still kind of felt in game design and honestly like player expectations for how online worlds should feel and look. There's a reason that I think to this week they're doing fresh servers for classic, essentially classic, second classic. I mean, I went back and played classic. My wife got into it then. I played it back in the day. I feel this tug to play it again in classic just because of that original game just is such a massive influence on so many things, and the social community features that it brought into gaming
Yeah.
is still kind of set a high watermark. There's a lot of people who lament as World of Warcraft expansions come out losing the community of the original game. It's really hard to overstate like how much this changed how we interacted at the time in the gaming industry. And it was a huge success. I mean, subscription based games, I remember paying a subscription for Star Wars Galaxies for a little bit. I don't know if it felt worthwhile. This felt worthwhile. It was one of those arguments when people would come in, how much are you paying? You're paying $50, $60 for a new game. You get 20 hours out of it. You pay 15 a month and you're getting hundreds of hours out of it potentially. So it was kind of like that cost value for a lot of people. So, immersive world building, polished gameplay, massive like culture of online community. Like it lasted a long time for those reasons.
Yeah. My experience with WoW um, goes to its launch date because I had to work the release day and the release night for it.
I think we
Oh,
both did at different
yeah,
stores.
I was in Chicago for sure
Oh yeah.
during this time, and I was working at the. If you guys are in Chicago, you guys know the GameStop. It's the one on Montrose and Central Park, right? Or Montrose and Central next to the park, and I remember I don't think I was there for like the midnight release, but I was there up to when the store closed, getting it ready for the midnight release, right? Of course, I grabbed my own copy, but to have a game that has a community and like to be like immersed for the first time, this was the game that did it for me. Like I had a decent computer at the time, and by the way, Blizzard games are excellent for having potato computers. They optimize their games really well in my opinion. But this was the first time where like I'm a huge fan of Warcraft. I played the RTSs. Now I get to be a person in that world, walking around that world, and that was like a new concept for me in a video game. I was gonna be in this world with other people in the world that are real in front of their computer, right? And that was like to me was like, man, this is the future of gaming. Like
Yeah.
not even like graphically, but like lifestyle and culturally. It was a big jump for me.
Well, it
Yeah.
was a huge world, which is
Oh yeah,
something a lot of
100%.
people who maybe don't play it or haven't played it in a long time don't remember. Like getting around, you had to grind to get money to get a mount. It was
Oh
not
yeah, yes.
easy or quick to get back in the day. Nowadays, we understand a lot more. But it felt massive. It felt lived in. Every corner had something you kind of remember. And going back years later and playing classic vanilla when it launched in 2019, like it's strange how much little detail you still kind of remember in the back of your head. It was just it
Yeah.
was crazy.
Mhm.
But the only other thing I had for this day to move it on was in 2009 in our city of Seattle nearby, Undead Labs was formed. You'll know them as the team that made State of Decay. And the reason I wanted to shout them out is because I had a personal connection. I got to know them early on at PAX when they were showing off State of Decay for the first time. It was before Microsoft had picked them up, I'm pretty sure. But in my previous position, I was able to work with the devs on some of their games. And it was just really cool to see that was, this time in gaming history when they actually were founded and started to put in the work. They're still working on the latest State of Decay. Can't give any information on that, but, we look forward to it.
Well, here you go, chat. I want to share this with y'all. Oh, is that the right one?
Oh,
Oh, okay. We're
oh,
moving
the
around.
Night Elf
Okay.
is going to have something to say.
This is I think we only had one in the store because no one knew that it was a thing. But I was like, oh, that's cool. I really want to play this game, so I ended up pre-ordering the first. This is expensive, but
It is.
this is actually open though, so and the code's been used. But yeah, this is the first one among the many that I started collecting in the World of Warcraft. But I just remember this. This is like dear to my heart because this was like one, the only copy in the store, and two, it was like this was my entry point in World of Warcraft. So
Yeah.
this is super cool.
I ended up picking up one of those after the fact because I didn't have money. I was working 2 jobs at the time of couch surfing. I didn't have time to buy a copy of that. But I definitely got it after the fact. And yeah, it is still expensive to get to the
The original
original launch
one,
one
yeah,
in good nick, in good
yeah.
condition.
Which it's surprising because they still sell out. Like not the older ones, but like when the new expansion comes out, the collectors still sells out too. Which means there's a demand for it.
There was a demand for the classic release one that came with a Ragnaros
Oh,
statue.
the anniversary one, yeah, that's
Yeah, the
cool.
anniversary one, and they might do another one. Who knows? Because it is the 20th anniversary of World of Warcraft right now. There's a bunch of stuff going on
Yeah,
for it.
dude. And if it's this thing is like I do want to get back to, I do want to play. I just don't have the time. I have so many games to play. I can't
Yeah,
dedicate myself to that.
yeah. Honestly, it's one of those things. Like I would, and I said I was feeling that tug to go back. The only reason I'd go back is to play vanilla. I played SOD for a little bit, Season of Discovery, and it was fun for a bit. But there's just something about the original one. I played up through its peak. I played through like pretty hardcore originally because I had spare time at that point in my life, up through Wrath of the Lich King up until like the first raid tier in Cataclysm. So I mean that game peaked at over or around 20 million subscribers. Like it was
It's so crazy.
huge.
This was before YouTube, 20 million subscribers. So that's crazy. Jago said basically WoW was one of the largest, most successful live services game ever. Facts. Correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the week of gaming history. We got some articles here for you. Which one do you guys want to go first? Which ones do you want to do first here?
Let's talk about the hotness right now, which is the Game Awards.
Okay. So I'll bring this up here. I'll pull up my screen here and share it. What is everybody's thought on the Game Awards as I pull this up?
As far as like what it is and what it does,
I mean, just in general,
man,
what are your thoughts? What it
I
does?
like having the Game Awards. They're better than the Spike Awards. Have you ever gone back and watched those?
Yeah, yeah.
Those are rough. You can go
Mhm.
back and see like the 2007 one. I want to say was aired recently. Ooh, it is rough, rough. I like the idea behind it, but it seems like every year, despite Jeff Keighley's best efforts, it's kind of getting too big for itself and starting to have a lot of issues now. And this year is not helping.
Yeah. As more information gets released about the gaming awards, the more I start to feel that it's like a club for high end. Like if you want to be part of this club, you got to pay up. You know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I feel about that. Which also like to me, in my opinion, helps skew what's good and what's not good. And I think this article here really kind of helps kind of illustrate that. What game fans say got snubbed for the Game Awards and the GOTY nominations. Now it's a big topic to talk about, but we're going to focus on the GOTY nomination here. So this article is from CBR by Sophie Ulanoff here. This year's Game Awards nominations for GOTY have been announced, and it's quite a mixed bag. Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth, Wukong, Elden Ring, Erdtree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Metaphor Fantasio have all earned the honor of being nominated for this year's Game of the Year. While all these games are well deserving of the nomination, some players feel like their personal favorite has been snubbed. So the big things that they were talking about is that, like, for example, they didn't see Silent Hill 2 remake, which was received incredibly well by a lot of the fans. The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom and Stellar Blade were just a few other games that they felt like they should have been up there. For example, I think one of the things they were talking about is why is Balatro up there when Silent Hill 2 is there, you know? But the thing that they're talking about specifically is that there's a debate of why there's a DLC on the Game of the Year and why is a remake considered to be Game of the Year. Should those things be separate? Should those things be a different category? Are there specific things that prerequisites that need to be in a Game of the Year? Right, it can't be like just a DLC where you need another game to play it, right? Stuff like that. So I want to
Right.
chat. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear the panel's thoughts on this. Let's have a discussion.
Now, I earlier today, I think it was earlier today, but like earlier today, I posted, you know, a quick Cliff's Notes version of my thoughts on the whole matter. And simply put, if DLC if DLCs were actually going to be considered for any sort of, you know, any sort of recognition at, gaming awards ceremonies, which, you know, I would say they should, because there is still, there is still work. There is still technical and there's still technical and visual artistry that goes into these expansions that should be celebrated. But DLC, how considering how much is being, developed and produced, just sheer numbers wise, having DLC or having expansions in their own category should have been the way that they went with this. Because again, Shadow of the Erd Tree, while it may be a fantastic expansion on Elden Ring, it's not a full standalone game by itself. You still need the base game in order to play it or access it.
I think a lot of the frustration does stem from that reason. Just because, like, what if, let's just say, the base game wasn't considered Game of the Year, but its DLC was? So only a portion of the game is good, or Game of the Year worthy. Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of debate that goes into that because maybe we have to identify what the, like I said, the prerequisites to be nominated for Game of the Year, right?
And on top of that, it also, you know, like you were saying a couple minutes ago, as far as like, skewing opinion amongst, the consumer base. And, you know, if DLC, with DLC being added, well, with a piece of DLC being added to the straight up, you know, top tier, the heavyweight card, the game of the year itself nomination,
Yeah.
It's, it's like the committee that's voting on these is again trying to, trying to push a favorite, trying to be the tastemakers, as opposed to, you know, as opposed to celebrating what's out there, especially when the Game of the Year awards is ostensibly supposed to be something that is not only voted on by, their little committee, but is also voted on and decided on by, by gamers, by the consumers. It is still by and large, or ostensibly, the VGAs are still a consumer awards show. It should be consumer recognition, but now it's becoming more and more blatant, more and more evident that, like you said, it's a club. It's every year it gets more and more corporate.
I'm sorry. I think I read somewhere that indie devs are required to pay at least $125,000 to feature a trailer in the game awards, right?
Yeah, I think
Super Bowl
125,
rates,
probably like an upwards of a quarter mil.
right? And so and for an indie studio, that's a lot of money, right? So that's kind of like the other thing too is,
I
are
can
we?
understand with a platform of that size having a high cost when there's so many people competing for it and they need to fund it. I get that. But you're right that it's restrictive and they don't have like options or a showcase specific to it. I mean, the thing is, like, as we're bringing this all up, the thing that comes to mind is that meme of just like from Star Wars. I think it's Obi-Wan saying you became what you were supposed to destroy,
Yeah.
essentially. Like the Game Awards were supposed to be this break from the corporatized feeling of E3 and what E3 became. I mean, we
It
have Summer
became
Games
E3.
Fest during that same time, but the Games Awards was an answer to like the Spike TV Awards, and the awards having an award show for the games. That's a little bit more of like the Oscars kind of feel. Like it's meant to be a little bit more like,
Grassroots.
well,
Yeah.
I'm not so much like grassroots as they're trying to make it legitimate, trying to make it more like
Hmm.
the Oscars, trying to make it more of a show, like a showcase kind of thing. But like you were saying, it's gone so heavy into corporate that it just doesn't have that same feeling. It's a community based thing in the sense that you can vote for it, but how it's being put up there as a choice, you don't know who the panelists are always, who are choosing these things or given the okay for this to like go forward. Yeah, I agree that there should be a best DLC. There's so many good DLCs that have come out. I don't know if it needs or how many times in a year you're going to have like a giant list of games to choose from, but it does kind of like without any kind of warning, there is a DLC on there. I won't personally say that's game of the year. I'd say it's a fantastic DLC.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a
Hmm.
fantastic showing of what makes that game so good. I just don't think I'd call it game of the year with, like you mentioned, some of the games that are not on there. The number of nominations for Silent Hill 2, but it's not nominated for game of the year over that or
Or
Balatro. Like I
DLC. Yeah.
haven't played Balatro, so I can't speak to it.
Yeah, and that's kind of like why I think people are frustrated is they'd love to hear what the requirements are to be nominated and what gets the how it gets voted, right? Because to my understanding from what I've heard from Alana Pierce, that is that there is like a specific committee for this.
Yeah.
That is, I think currently they're hiding who the jury is. So and I think that's a good and bad thing. The good thing is they don't get harassed, right? That's the big thing. And then the bad thing is that it is hidden. So now it just feels more suspicious, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And there's been a couple, like a couple people in chat, Blue and Andre are bringing up the number of games that we're seeing up here and the indictment on like Western devs and the fact that we're not seeing too many Western developed games on there. Yeah, I mean, if you look at this year, all the games that we're seeing, the ones that have done well and are made well, aren't really devved in the West. The games that we've been getting this year, I mean, think about how little there has been of first party PlayStation games. And then the first party Xbox games we've gotten have kind of been misfires with like
yeah,
Starfield and stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, it's kind of a rough time to find games that are hitting the market like these other ones. But I look what they're up against. There's some amazing titles. This has been a pretty good year for games, all said and done by the end of the year. So there's always going to be when you have that number of games to choose from. There's going to be some snubs that will piss people off. Their favorite game is not going to be on the list. You can only have so many. But
for
the
sure.
the lack of visibility, lack of communication, getting this, and it's like here's your choices. You're just like I don't know. There should be some
Is
better
there a
choices than that.
category for best like developer, best publisher, or anything like that?
There usually is right up there with the like streamer awards, content
Yeah, it's
creator
true. Which is
awards.
like in my opinion, the dumbest award.
I do. What I will say is, I do appreciate they've streamlined some of those categories,
Yeah.
like as like an off-screen, like, hey, I'm introducing like this, and this is the winner. Move on to the next
Yeah.
topic. So still getting like a shout out. So I do like they're getting some good feedback, but yeah, this one seems like a little bit of a stumble. I mean,
Yeah.
we were just talking about Dragon Age Inquisition earlier in 2014. There wasn't a lot of other titles to go up against. It's the opposite of what we have here, where there's so many good titles that snubs are going to happen. However, the ones that have made it through on, let's be honest, like the biggest one, game of the year, that people hang their hat on, have just, it's, I don't know, a little bit of a letdown. I don't know if letdown's the right word. It's just kind of surprising.
I was I watched the Game Awards, and I think Ace and Blue and I we also watched a couple of these like Summer Games Fest together, right? We had a
Hmm.
what do you call this, reaction video or stream on it. And the thing that I'm noticing, which I don't appreciate about the show, is that the amount of airtime that the devs get to talk about their game versus like the like the fluff, like the actors showing up and like all these people that are like, why are you're the face in this video game, but why are you having more airtime than the people that have made this game, right? So that to me, it's like it's becoming more Hollywood, like the Oscars, versus what it should be like. Like what we're trying to achieve here is that it's about the games, not about these Hollywood
I will
actors
say
for games.
there's a happy middle ground. Let's be honest, a lot of devs aren't meant to be public speakers
Yeah, no,
by
I understand
personality.
that, but like but it's just, but I feel like there still should be a person that represents them, right?
Sure,
Within the studio, but at the same
sure.
time, like I'm seeing more. I'm just seeing this is just a observation, right? I'm just seeing more like actors on the show, which I think drives up the cost of the show versus like featuring the developers and the real heroes that made the games. Is what I'm
Well, they're
saying.
not paying the actors to be there. And let's be honest, the thing that most people are going to latch onto are the familiar faces and the famous faces. It
Oh
gets
yeah, and I
more
agree.
viewers there for sure.
Yeah,
I do agree there needs to be a middle ground, but especially with like how high pressure game dev is nowadays and the fact that you always got to be creating, you're not always going to get everyone. That's why there's been more and more remote winners these last couple years. I think the cost to get a seat there can be pretty expensive. So if you are
Mhm.
getting, let's see, I don't know, a nomination for something, and then you have to pay for your dev team, you can't afford to send the whole dev team. You can only send certain people, and then even then, it may not be in the budget with the cost of some of these shows nowadays.
but
So
being remote or there is irrelevant to what I'm talking about. Is kind of what I'm saying. Is like because like for example like Devolver Digital, they're amazing at featuring their stuff, but maybe that's just unique to them, right?
it is
Yeah.
unique to them.
And so I feel like there should be more of that from each company versus just like putting an actor in there. Because but I understand the purpose of said actor. It's the hook, right? It's to grab people's attention, But I just feel like we just gone too far in that one direction
I
from my
think
observation.
I think one other thing you're not quite considering is a lot of the awards are not specifically geared towards dev studios. It's towards performances. It's like music, acting, game of the year is the like one of the few, and then you're talking about like sound design and stuff, and it's not always it's like one person or a small crew. Like there's not as many dev focused topics, I
Yeah,
feel like.
yeah. But
And
think
that's
about
just a problem with the structure of the show as a
yeah.
whole.
That's what I'm saying. Like think about what you just said right there. It's not about the game itself. It's about the performance of the game. So I think the focus is just lost. But we'll
Well, it's
see.
been that's a problem from day one. Then you're
Yeah.
going like we're both talking to each other the same thing.
I
The
I
problem
think
is
I
like
think what
there's
I'm looking for is not an E3, it's something else.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's probably what's that other show that they have in like Germany, Gamescom. It's more
Gamescom.
like yeah, it's more like that than the Game Awards. Because I'm trying to I'm celebrating the creation of these games. Well, at the same time, the Game Awards is for like the performance of the games. I get what you're saying. Yeah, I'm just looking for something in the wrong spot. All right, Chad, what do you guys have on 30 seconds for speeches is not long enough? I think I agree and disagree because the guy that plays Kratos in God of War can ramble a lot. He was there. What's his name? I forgot his name. Chris something.
Chris Judge.
Chris Judge. Yeah, he loves being on the microphone.
Yeah, I
Do you
think
guys?
the best way to say it is what we're both kind of talking around, just trying to get my thoughts together. It's the fact that, like you were saying, it's an overshadowing of like smaller indie games, but it's that balancing of the roles, a celebration of gaming culture with what it's become. Like you mentioned, Ace, the kind of corporatization of it. There's such a heavy focus on premieres and commercial promotion,
Yeah,
which kind of makes you feel like this isn't really a game show at this point. It's kind of challenging like a bigger tension in the gaming industry about like representation, about recognition of actual creative innovation versus just like the fact that, it's part of this media conglomerate.
And I mean, more often than not, especially from just talking to various folks on social media, more often than not, it feels like people are just only even tuning into the VGAs basically just to see basically just to see announcements.
what's coming out? Yeah,
What's coming
that's
out?
true. It's true. I mean, that's what E3 is, right? Technically.
Yeah.
Well, E3's been dead.
No, no. What I'm saying is that like since this replaced E3, this
Oh,
is their
this hasn't
expect.
replaced E3. That's Summer Games Fest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Summer Games Fest has basically replaced E3. and is more grassroots. That itself is coming into some issues now with like corporatization and like what's happening behind the scenes with that and representation. But that is the answer to E3. And then now there's been a heavier focus towards, like you mentioned, Gamescom and TGS, so Tokyo Game Show.
Yeah, yeah, all feature different things. But yeah, but and I think the future of the Game Awards is, I think the community does a good job of calling out BS and showing and acting what they like and what they don't like. And it's just gonna come to that eventually, right? So, and luckily we live in a world where if they don't like it, people tend to make something else, and that's okay. I'm okay with that as well. But yeah, it is not gonna be for everyone. That's for sure.
Speaking of, if people don't like it, people tend to, make their own. There has been the issue coming up with, with someone actually trying to, put together their own rival to the VGAs, called, what was it? I think it was like the Real Game Awards or something like that.
Oh
But
yeah, with
Okay.
Jeff
Okay.
Keighley actually going
Stuttering
through
Craig.
trying to, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and Jeff Keighley is actually going through trying to copyright the Game Awards in order to effectively hamstring what Stuttering Craig's trying to do.
yeah, yeah. You know what's funny, because I do follow side scrollers. I follow Stuttering Craig and his crew, right? And he says that like ever since Jeff Keighley did that, his what do you call this, his reach for the Real Game Awards, his parody was like increased because so him doing that helped him out because of the wording, on that. But yeah, I mean, and I think that's totally fine. I don't think, it's like it reminds me of that time when
Yeah,
somebody was
sorry,
trying
that's
to
what I meant.
trademark Candy Crush. Remember that? They were trying to trademark candy so nobody could use candy in anything. So
Cool.
it just reminds me of that. But yeah, that's all I really have for that. I mean, I don't put too much weight on the Game Awards. Like I choose my own Game of the Years, and what they have on there, I don't really, put doesn't put any weight on whether I should play it or not play it, Game of the Year or not. But yeah, I just think they should not put remasters is a weird one, right? And then DLC for Game of the Year is super weird in my opinion. But I guess we're here
Yeah.
now. This world.
Remasters and remakes are definitely a gray area by and large because, more often, remasters and, more current gen ports tend to put enough, you know, it's the ship of Theseus dilemma. There's more that's being added to the game that in a way makes it a different title, makes it a different piece of software.
Speaking of games that don't require DLC to be good,
Well, hold
Half
on.
Life.
It did have the episodes. Those are technically DLC. It did need to
Nah.
be good to answer your question. Yes.
I felt like they were their own games. I never felt that it was DLC for some reason. Maybe just the way it was marketed or something. That's just my personal opinion. But anyway, this is your pick for the article here. So Half Life 2 gets the biggest player count on Steam. What's this all about?
So Half-Life 2 released before Steam was really being tracked back in the day for how many concurrent players before that became a metric for the industry.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, by the shirt I'm wearing and discussions we've had, the 20th anniversary of Half-Life 2 just hit. And Half-Life 2 has just reached over 50,000 concurrent players on Steam.
So old.
It's its highest peak since records began because it predated
Mm.
it. So with this
Mm.
20th anniversary, Valve is kind of celebrating. They've released a bunch of free updates to go with it. It is basically known as the FPS game with great story and physics. It was all about those physics puzzles. That was the Havoc physics engine.
Mhm.
But it was immersive. It was amazing. It stroke of genius, as a lot of people say. But it's just hit this new concurrent mark. Steam and a lot of like the Steam database only has information going back to 2008, so we don't know how many people really played this in its original release when it first came out. But something that released 20 years ago is hitting these kind of numbers nowadays. Jagos, I'm glad you brought that up because we will talk about that too. Um, but the fact that so many people kind of flocked back to it, Valve actually made the game free for a limited time if you did not know. Now, as of today, I think the 19th, it looks like it's no longer free, but it's still not an expensive game. I still suggest you pick it up if you haven't. But the biggest thing that really that really drove a lot of this was Valve shadow dropping the 20th anniversary documentary that they put together, done by Valve.
Do I have that
So it hit
on
that
here?
concurrent peak. We got this awesome anniversary documentary. And yeah, you're going to grab that link there. So this article, there was a couple other ones that kind of released at the same time. This was the Game Rant article, IGN, GBR, a bunch of other places end up talking about this new concurrent player count because it is huge. But if you get a chance, it is on the longer side. That's 2 hours. But the fact that Valve released this documentary without any kind of forward like information on it, again, just shadow dropped it on the world. It contains a lot of really cool information. They got a lot of the original crew back in to get interviewed to tell what happened during the dev cycle on this thing. And at the very end of it, the last little section, I think it's about 5-6 minutes, they actually talk about Half-Life 2 Episode 3, and we get some look at it for the first time ever. This is video that had never been seen on it before about some stuff that was happening in its dev. So again, it's during development, it's not a complete title or anything, but it's the first time we've ever seen it. So for someone like me who always wanted an episode 3 or a Half-Life 3, it was really cool to actually learn a little bit of the decision behind it as to why they didn't move forward with it and how things got out. Half-Life died so other Valve properties could be a thing. I think it became Left for Dead.
That's what I'm
uh,
saying. It was like Jago said. Plus, they could have hit episode 3 because they worked on Left for Dead. You could
Yeah.
say Half Life 3 was Left for Dead.
Yep. Ha.
Too soon.
No, no, not it happened. It happened years ago. But I highly recommend it. Toss it on in the background. It's a really cool thing to learn about the history. I didn't know that they were pretty much out of money at one point, and there was a chance they were going to have to close everything. Jagos brought up earlier, but Vivendi was creating a gigantic court case out of this, and basically what saved Valve was a summer intern that happened to be a fluent Korean like natural speaker. Like they had a bunch, like a giant stack of papers that were sent to them by lawyers, and this summer intern was able to translate basically that all those legal documents to find out it was full of BS, and they were able to save everything because of that one person. So keep your interns around, hug them close tonight. Thank them once again that Half-Life 2 was able to be a thing. But it was just really cool to see that. Check it out. 20 years ago, Half-Life 2 hit the market, changed a lot of perceptions about video games. Games as art. But yeah, they decided to release a bunch of cool stuff, make the game free for a while, and kind of live high on the past.
I'll pop that in the chat for you guys. There you go. Awesome. Hey man, we owe a lot to Half Life. Let's like not forget our roots here and our ancestors. So,
Our ancestors.
like there are some games that we probably just forgotten over time, but we owe it to them to to have what we have now because of them, inspired by them, right? So, the next article here. Are you guys ready to move on?
Uh, Almost, yeah. It's one of those things like as we have people in chat who are fans and we've talked so much about it, and I know for me like how I feel about it, but I wonder what you two think. Do you think they should have or should still release episode 3, or do you think it was a miss that they didn't release it?
Ace, what you got?
You know, I'm this hits a bit of a gray area for me because people people want it. People like even though it's mentioned more as a meme now, people still want Half-Life 2 episode 3, or they want Half-Life 3. However, the window of opportunity for developing and releasing that game may have long passed, and it could most definitely run afoul of the same issue that Shenmue 3 had.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's if it's too far from the original of why everybody liked the other one, games tend to move on pretty quick. For example, like as I get older, because I'm in my early 40s, right? I just remember in the 80s, beat 'em ups were a thing. That was a big thing in the arcades. Then fighting games in the 90s, right? In the 2000s, we left that to go with what? First person shooters, third person shooters, right?
Mhm.
And then eventually we went to hero shooters and then open world games. Sorry, open world games, then hero shooters, then battle royale. Like there's
MOBA.
like right MOBAs, yeah. So yeah, excuse me if I miss a bunch of them, but there is like eras that we have in video games. What's popular and what's hot, you know. For Half Life 3 to come out now, I don't think it will be the same Half Life 3 that what they wanted to release if they have to modernize it for new people to buy. Because I feel like every time they make a new game out of an old IP, they have to consider the money behind it. The guys in the suits are like, well, how is this going to appeal to the Fortnite crowd? How is this going to appeal to, you know, to the people that haven't played Half Life before? How can we sell the most copies ever, right?
Yep,
And
it's the it's the people in the suits, the lightning chasers with empty bottles.
correct.
So
So
it's
yeah,
interesting you both bring that up because Valve is not your typical company.
That's a valid point.
They are not. The way they go about their entire dev cycle, what they choose to fund, what they choose to follow up on, and they're not beholden to a big publishing stakeholder like EA, for example, and what happened with BioWare or what happened with any of the other things that EA is in charge of, right? I highly recommend, because I don't want to get too long winded about it, I highly recommend people who are in chat commenting on this right now, and you too as well, watch that documentary.
Hmm.
It gives a really good insight into why they couldn't move forward or didn't feel they could move forward. Because a lot of times, what they decide to tie Half Life to and iterate on is new technologies, new experiences. And if they
yeah,
don't have that, they don't feel they can make a game that does it justice. So
Yep.
Andre mentions in the chat, but Half Life 2 was such a high bar they can't replicate again. That's been a common conversation. Like they can't live up to it. But Valve and their devs in this documentary speak to that a little bit in the sense that they explain why they felt they'd exhausted everything they could by the end of episode 2, that there wasn't anything new to put into it. So it'd just be a rehash. It would be just because. And the
Okay.
story couldn't be pushed forward by it. And now, again, time and time again, as time has gone on and as stuff has kind of passed, it never felt like it was the right time. They moved on to Left 4 Dead, they moved on to other properties, that it didn't make sense to just go back just because. And that's something we kind of talk about, like living up to the expectations. Yeah, it would have been nice to have it, but if it was trash,
what's the point? Yeah,
what's the point, right?
yeah,
So at that point, the flip side of that for me is like it didn't need to be a huge innovation for episode 3. I need a finishing of the story. I want to know
yeah,
what happens to
for
those
sure.
characters, and that's what I want more than anything. And with the heavy push nowadays towards story driven single player games and how that's kind of come back to the forefront, and we've seen such amazing stories being told and created in the gaming space,
We're
this
starting to
felt
get
like the
some.
right time to have something like Half-Life come back, where it doesn't need to just be a multiplayer shooter or beholden to the current trend. It can be its own thing. I mean, we kind of saw that a little bit with Half-Life Alex. For anyone who
Right.
played that,
Right.
it was because the innovation of VR, they wanted to revisit it with that new technology and build an experience in that. And I had mentioned in a previous pod, but that VR Alex game, I borrowed it from a friend, and I didn't realize how much of a horror game that
Yeah.
entire like franchise can be until you're in those moments. Ravenholm was scary, I get it, but yeah, no, it was completely different. So if you think about that, the way we interact with that, the mediums, there could be a really good chance. And I think now's a really good time to kind of revisit that conversation. But at the same time, I can understand after seeing that dev and stuff, like it was tough. There was no right answer, and it is what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to see Half Life 3. It's long story short, but doing it right, I think it's gonna be that's a hard like thing to do because look
Well,
at all the
yeah, but I would say at this point, it's not about doing it right. It's doing it right for them, not for the consumer. Like the stuff we've seen that are these single player games we're talking about are not always made just, to be check boxes. That are made by the good ones are the ones that are made by the vision of those dev teams,
Sure. I
led
understand that.
correctly, put out in the right way.
I think like because you said that one of the purposes of them creating a sequel is to like innovate with the technology of the time, right? Like Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2 was like the shadows and like, graphically it was just like a leap, right? And they even made the source engine out of that, which is great. And then the what is that? The physics engine with the gravity gun, like those are things. And then they made the VR. So they're taking all these like new things, they're being innovative with it, and I like appreciate that as a designer. I think the next step, I think AI, and I mean it in a way where like maybe like extra smart companions or your companion that learns or like your enemies that learn like stuff like that. Maybe that's like the next step that they want to do. I don't know, but if they're gonna take it to the next innovative step, I think that'd be kind of fun.
But yeah, it's definitely a fun conversation to have, and like I said, maybe chat will, if they haven't yet watched the documentary, come back with your thoughts next time.
Yeah,
It's
next
crazy.
week, you guys got homework. All right, come back next week. Tell us what you guys think of the documentary. All right, and tell Nick your true feelings. We got one more article here, really short, really good one, I think, because this tugs on my heartstrings or teases me a little bit. Let me see here. So we got Blizzard hiring for an open world shooter game. So Jagos was saying that this should have been StarCraft earlier. Hey, this could be it, man. Blizzard is hiring for an unannounced upcoming open world shooter game. A job ad posted on November 13 revealed this, though the requisition doesn't have too many details about what the game is. Let's see here. Job calls for someone to implement strategies that have shown potential but have not yet permeated in the AAA space. The successful candidate will work with Blizzard's engineering, art, and audio teams to help guide the project from concept to release. This wording specifically suggests whatever this game is, it might be early in development. So, the rumored StarCraft shooter was said to be led by Dan High. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. The former Ubisoft and Far Cry veteran who joined Blizzard as vice president and the general manager in 2022. So, as part of the iterative nature of game development, Blizzard cancels about 50% of the games it works on. So, whatever new Blizzard shooter is in development, it's not guaranteed to release. Hopefully, this is like the Project Titan that they wanted to actually make.
Well, Project Titan became
Overwatch.
Overwatch, but it was meant to be like World of Warcraft online shooter.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, right? Microsoft announced that Blizzard had canceled its survival game, codenamed Odyssey, which some staffers moving on to an incubation project that was said to be a StarCraft.
Jago's playing all the Blizzard hits in chat.
Yeah. So this brings me hope that we'll get a cool or Nova in the first person shooter still, right? But an open world StarCraft game would be kind of cool. Honestly, I'm so jaded. It's probably going to be like Destiny. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh God,
that's.
I hope not.
And they're Activision, right? Which is ugh. Oh, they're Sony now, aren't they?
Blizzard, or sorry, Bungie.
Bungie, right?
Yeah, Bungie is. Bungie's
Sony
Sony bought them a while ago, but now they're taking a direct hand in it after their most recent releases.
Yeah.
And financial fallout.
So what do you think it is? Hopefully, and this is a stretch, long stretch.
Ghost.
What is it?
StarCraft Ghost. Give me Ghost.
I hope it's Blackthorn. If you guys know what Blackthorn is, you are the OGs. You are the OGs. But yeah, a Blackthorn open world shooter would be kind of cool. It's like Mad Max and like what is this, Doom at the same time.
It kind of feels like it's almost more like Turok.
Yeah, you're right. Because like he's shooting up orcs and stuff.
Yeah, it's more like that. I mean, this job ad was only posted this week, so we can't say for sure that it is StarCraft. I want it to be true because I love StarCraft and I think it's underutilized. And I am sad that we never got StarCraft Ghost. But I understand after seeing some of the gameplay and stuff that actually leaked well after the fact. I could see why it hit development hell and didn't eventually come out. But you
I
know,
would love a
well, we don't know
StarCraft
if
one
it's
for sure.
connected to that. Jason Schreier did release his Play Nice book, The Rise, Fall, and Future of Blizzard Entertainment. Interesting book to read. Interesting book to read. But
Jagos.
they did mention that there was, or he mentioned in that book that StarCraft is, or there was a StarCraft game in development. So,
Jago says, "Okay, quick question: who at Blizzard knows of Blackthorn?"
well,
It's true.
yeah, that or maybe Lost Vikings, same
Well,
era.
Lost Vikings was in Heroes of the Storm, at least.
Yeah. Why didn't they
But
bring Blackthorn back for that? Or is there a character in World of
it's too
Warcraft that's
too
named after?
powerful. Too
Yeah,
powerful. Blackthorn's too
he'd be
powerful.
overpowered.
Well, it wasn't. I thought. What's his name? Rex in World of Warcraft, the one with the bear. Wasn't he supposedly like a homage to somebody? I can't remember. He was
I can't
his
remember
design
either.
concept was for another. It was another
Okay, now
Blizzard character.
here's a stupid little, I guess, semi pipe dream idea that I had. You know, if Blizzard is working on a new open world shooter, maybe they might actually, try and fold it into Overwatch and put some actual story content into a game.
Oh no, it's just an Overwatch online Destiny game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like I feel like because I just
Oh,
know them, and the first thing that comes to mind is like how much money can we make? So they'll take a popular IP, put a modern like system in it that is monetized like left and right. You
Oh,
know,
oh yeah.
it's we can hope for good things, but we just know that's not the reality, right? Temper our
Damn near
expectations.
anything we could wish for when it comes to Blizzard
I'm telling you,
is a
taking a cat's
monkey
trays
paw.
all night. All
It must
good,
be
all
a
good.
monkey paw wish.
All right. Well, I don't want to like dabble too much in the upset of Blizzard and their history and you know, our disappointment. But
We got a
I
little bit more to take care of this evening.
yeah, I do want tonight is jam packed, but I do want Nicholas's 2 minute review on Dragon Age Velgar.
no, I'm not ready for this.
2 minute review, man. Just tell me like what you played so far. I don't want to in depth, right? You kind of talked about it earlier. I want a little bit of comparison between the old one and this one, and and I think I appreciate your feedback because you're such a huge fan.
Oh, it is. When I have so many feelings, I can't condense into 2 minutes. I guess I'll give you a too long didn't read of my personal feelings so far. I want to say I've put in about 50 hours by this point, so usually about halfway through most. So I'm
That's a
complete.
lot already. Damn.
Yeah, I'm a completionist when it comes to these kind of things. I'm a huge fan of Dragon Age, huge fan of BioWare. This is not a Dragon Age game. Heck, I would almost say it's not a BioWare game.
Hmm.
And let me too long didn't read like really break down how I feel really really quickly.
Yeah.
Is
Please.
everything that Dragon Age has. I'm sorry, every single I said it earlier. Every single Dragon Age game when it released caused some kind of controversy or some kind of like split in the fandom. None of those games released and was fully loved. People loved it or hated it. It happened with Inquisition. People loved or hated Dragon Age 2. I remember getting in like heavy verbal disagreements when I was working in the store with one of my coworkers who loved Dragon Age 2 and I did not. Like did not. There's things I like about each of them, but that's always kind of been part and parcel with Dragon Age. There's things you like, there's things you don't like. I loved Origins. I don't like that the main character wasn't voiced. It played like an old school PC burn title, so it was great for people who wanted to spend all that time in there in that grim dark kind of thing. This game is not made for Dragon Age fans. And I would say that something that let's say it this way, with all of those Dragon Age games leading up to this, what you could say about those games were no matter which package it was, Origins 2, Inquisition, Awakening, the story and the characters and the dialogue were what kind of put BioWare on the map. It's what those games are known for. Say what you will about the mechanics, say what you will about the setting. That's what they were known for. They're also known for having kind of jank or just weird combat systems or changes in those kind of things. Or with Inquisition went full like open world and people didn't like the game bloater on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Veilguard is the opposite. It is probably one of in 2024, mind you, with everything we've been talking about in the industry, it is one of the most polished games I've ever played right at launch. It plays so well. It's incredibly well optimized. The world looks really good. I'm not that bothered, honestly, by the like the character designs or like the art style. There's multiple times I stopped and I really liked the world, but the dialogue and the story and the characters are not good. They're just not. It's the complete opposite shift of what you expect from these kind of games. It's not a Bioware game. It's not a Dragon Age game. I don't think it's as bad as everyone say this far in, trying to even play the devil's advocate a lot. It's not a great game and it doesn't have legs on it. Usually when you play these games, you'll go back through and you'll make some different decisions. It doesn't feel at all, because I went back and started a new character to just try a couple different things. It doesn't feel like any of my decisions matter. My like background, if I choose to be a Krenari, if I choose to be a elf, if I choose to be a human, if I choose to be a dwarf, doesn't matter. In the old games, it mattered. It changed how people in the world interacted with you.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't happen at all. So that's my too long didn't read. It's not terrible, but it's not the game you expect it to be. And I think it's I don't know if you've watched the concurrent players, but it peaked because it started good, but the more time people spend with that game, it just starts going down.
Mm. What other game what you think is similar to this? Like as far as gameplay and like the way it is.
Honestly, it's hard for me to pin down. I feel it grabs some ideas from like the latest God of War games, and the way you kind of like are behind your character and interact with the world and move from hub to hub kind of thing. But it plays a lot like Destiny in terms of its bones, in that you have this hub area. It's honestly, it's very clear that this game had multiplayer roots in the past. Remember, this game was single player, canceled, became a multiplayer, multi-service game, but then everything that happened with that, it was rebooted again. But you can tell that those bones stuck. The world is
Interesting.
just constantly repetitive. You go back to this hub world that feels a lot like going to the tower in Destiny, where you like can talk to your crew or like gather supplies or grab quests, and then you just go back into the thing and then go back to the world, and it's not interconnected. It's
Mhm.
not like the other games where you can choose to go through the map to the other thing. No, you go back to the hub area or back to the lighthouse. Like it's a little disappointing that despite rebooting it and knowing it wasn't the right way to go, in hopes of like saving time, they kind of just forced it into these bones that I don't feel it really fits what the series is. So
Okay. I think that's a fair and honest review. Pretty straightforward, honestly.
yeah,
Um,
Jagos called it out. Like honestly, one of the things that I loved about like Inquisition was the Trespasser DLC. The DLC is something that Bioware is also kind of known for as well. The fact that they released this game and they've said already no DLC. There's
yeah.
no DLC coming out for this, not seasonal, no DLC packs, nothing. They've shifted away from it. That feels like a big middle finger to the fans of this.
especially
Like,
especially those that stuck, that really stick by Dragon Age Origins.
Yeah. Yeah, I
yeah,
think
it's strange. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, I appreciate your feedback on this. I don't want to go into it too much. I feel like this is a big hot button for everybody, especially chat. But like, yeah, my big thing on this was two things that come to mind is that I don't think it respected the legacy players, which to me is a big no. But I understand why, right? Because that was a big thing about like your decisions and how it tracked over. Two, I think this is the same situation where I remember when Devil May Cry 4 before it came out, we got DMC, you know, and so everybody wanted a new Devil May Cry, but they got DMC instead. But if you took DMC out of that game, Devil May Cry out of that DMC game, it was actually a really fun game, right? If you called it like Dante's Inferno or something too, it would have been better received by the community and other players because they didn't have that Devil May Cry expectation. So I feel like in this game, like if you remove Dragon Age and called it something else, people would actually like this game a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and honestly, like I've been enjoying my time with the combat. And again, it plays really solid. It is very, very well optimized with that many broken games as we've gotten lately. I can't harp on that enough. There's things that I do like about this game. There's things that are redeemable about it. On your point about the decisions you make and how that makes Bioware games, I understand that you're not going to be able to get every implication with as wide of range as lore that they've built into this universe. Not everything's going to carry over. You can't appease everyone. That's a lot to ask.
Yeah.
However, it's the fact that 95% of the decisions made in the lore in the past are not talked about or cared about at all.
Yeah.
Like, it feels so weird. Like, it's this weird, like, fugue state that I can't understand what's going on around me. Like, the decisions you made in the other games, like, there's some characters that show up in this game that are legacy characters. They show up in the
Yep.
first few
Yep.
titles, but they feel so ham-fisted. Like, it doesn't
Mm.
matter. They don't have any of the nuance of the characters, of the decisions that you made. It's just like they just pop in. You're like, oh, it's Morgan. That's cool. Oh, now she's just oh, okay. Well, what happened to the person I had her create a demon child with? It's like
You know,
that wasn't talked about.
it's
None
it's
of the
Dragon Age
worlds.
guest. It's Dragon Age guest starring Dragon Age
Yeah,
Legacy
yeah.
characters.
It sounds like a side adventure to the actual games that you
It's
played
action
historically.
RPG
Yeah.
with an appearance by Dragon Age. Like, it
Yeah,
is one of those things that it was just weird decision after weird decision, and it breaks my heart because I wanted to defend it more. And again, there's things about it I really do like. I think some of
Yeah.
the discord around it is too negative and people just jumping on it just because. I mean, a couple of the big name ones I won't cut on, shout out anything here and like create anything else, but some of the like big content creators that reviewed it or shit on it were called out later for having not done most of the stuff in the game. They just like sped through it. So yeah, they didn't get to see some of the big things that happened to her, some of the nuance. Like, you can't give a good faith review with that kind of bad action.
Yeah.
But they were right about a lot of other things, the dialogue and the story being a big one. And it's like reared its ugly head as time has gone on for me. I think some of the characters that were called like a pain in the ass to deal with, they're not that bad. There's more nuance to them once you do their stories. But even then, by the end of it, like, the way they chose to roll out some of the dialogue options, you shake your head, and that has never happened to me in a Bioware game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like Bioware it doesn't have the same people that it was when they started, right? So I
Sure,
can see that.
sure, but I mean, there's a difference between not having the same people and making all your marketing about tying back into what made Dragon Age great, and then not following up on it at all.
All right, man. Hey, appreciate your feedback on
More
it.
than 2 minutes. Sorry.
No, all good, all good. We're gonna go to Ace here because I know he's been loading up this bad boy on his stream. So I want to know why you're deciding to come back to this. Well, what made you want to play Orochi Ultimate again?
well, a couple of things. Firstly, there's the fact that you know, foreshadowing, spoilers. We got the Dynasty Warriors Origins demo coming on Friday.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I felt like it was a perfect time to just go back and revisit some of my favorite Muso titles. And Warriors Orochi 3 Ultimate, the definitive edition, is out on Steam. And I actually don't. Up until I picked that up, I didn't even have any of my. I don't have any of my previous copies because the last time I had it, it was on PS3, and it was part of the games I had to sell off a while back. But just getting back into Orochi 3 Ultimate, and like really sitting down and playing it again, especially, playing it again after, not doing so for so long, and also after having played through Warriors Orochi 4 Ultimate,
Mhm.
coming back to 3, it really showcases. Well, it reminds me a lot of the reasons why I reviewed the game in the first place back when it was on PS3. The Ultimate expansion to Warriors Orochi 3, that is it's like literally they took a whole nother game and crammed that in as the expansion. And this is size wise, mind you. Like Warriors Orochi 3 was a big enough game as is. This was like I think it was Jagos that actually gave this pretty apt description. It's like the Avengers Endgame of the Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors crossovers.
I hate how that's accurate.
And then with Warriors Orochi 3 Ultimate, you've got these extra 4 chapters that go even deeper into some of the mystic characters that were added to the game. And it's literally enough to where it just doubled the amount of content. It doubled the size of the game. And it was from top to bottom just a greater addition. It's more of what you loved about the core title to begin with.
Gotcha. So you're just kind of prepping yourself for Origins, and you're kind of going back to like your greatest hits.
Yep.
When it comes to Muso. Okay, I feel that. Yeah, no, I'm ready for the demo. It comes out in what, 2 days? So I'm all about that. Next week we'll definitely give you guys feedback, and I want to hear you guys talk about the demo too, what your thoughts are on the future of Muso, because I was watching the gameplay features of the game and I was like, oh wow, they're actually adding like commands to your armies, which was like a thing I thought about back in the day too. It's like, how they could change this a little bit is if maybe you can command your armies, and then now they're doing it. So I think it's super cool.
I mean, you could kind of do that in Dynasty Warriors 4 and 5 with your bodyguards. You've got your limited command sets for, that small unit that joins you, but they're really upping the scale in Origins. So it's like, you don't just have guards, but you have a contingent rolling with you. You are rolling deep.
The emphasis on like armies in Origins is good versus just like heroes fighting each other, and there's mobs everywhere, right? So I think that's the big change that they're doing. A little bit disappointed that they didn't go with the cell shaded route like in Samurai Warriors 5, but it's okay. Like I still think it's cool. Like I'm looking forward to this reboot. So yeah, I'm right with you on that, guys. So as far as me, what I am playing, nothing. I'm playing nothing new. I'm in a transition period of like what games to play next. So as you guys know, on the stream I played Space Marine 2. I did all the side missions on Saturday with you guys. If you guys attended that was pretty good. But now I'm trying to figure out what game to pull out here and what kind of mood I'm in to play. So.
I'm happy to come down there and help you choose. I've done like way too much of nostalgia lately. So like tomorrow I'm going to go see one of my favorite films ever because it's a anniversary showing in the theaters. And I never got to see it in theaters back in the day.
Oh, which one's that?
And I Fifth Element.
Cool.
Playing at the Regal.
Where?
The Regal. It's at the Regal tomorrow.
Yeah, I think is it one night only?
It was 2 nights, the 17th and tomorrow. So tomorrow's the last day.
Okay, cool.
So Ace, get on that right away. I'll be there.
Take the day off, bro.
But beyond that, I've been playing outside of Veilguard. I've been doing this Warcraft remaster Battle Chest.
I want to try that.
I might have to set my stream a little bit earlier tomorrow, just so that way I can get out there in time to go see it.
Yeah. You didn't know Samurai Warriors 5 was out? That's a great game. It's kind of like Origins, but with like Samurai Warriors. Graphically, I think that game is fantastic.
Absolutely.
I felt like having a Dynasty Warriors version of that game would have been cool, but I'll take Origins. It's still cool. So, all right. Well, we got a few more things here. I want to make sure when you guys attend that you guys get value for attendance, and we want to share some of the stuff that I feel that for this holiday. You guys got anything to add before I jump into this?
No, go for it.
All right. As always, we'll throw Dudley's music in there because Dudley's the man. So behind on Muso games? Okay. All right. So if it's your first time here tonight, folks, this is a section of the show where we do What's the Deal. And What's the Deal is where is my... Oh no, did I remove it? Let me see. I have too many windows open. That's the problem. All right. So in this segment, I wanted to do something for you guys for attending, kind of give you guys some value for showing up. We're here to help you save big on your gaming adventures, from the hottest discounts with the latest titles to unbeatable deals on accessories and gear. This segment is called What's the Deal? It's your go-to guide for finishing the best value in gaming, whether you're a collector, a casual player, or someone looking to upgrade your setup without breaking the bank. We got you covered here at the Gaming Academy. So let's dive into savings and let's rock and roll. So the first thing I want to add is that I usually want to recommend games that you can buy physically because historically I talked about the importance of buying physical games. I see back here. So the deals that I chose typically have some sort of physical factor to it that you can hold, play, and show and display. That's a good line. I just made that up right now. So
I think it's recorded.
There you go. First things first. Final Fantasy 16. So if you've never played the Final Fantasy 16, now's a good time. It's ranging from $25 on Amazon on the PS5. And also, if you have the Walmart or Walmart Plus, it's available there as well. So now it's a good time. For $25, that's a lot of value. H, you played Final Fantasy 16. Sorry, not 15. So what do you think about for $25?
It's a solid price. I mean, back when I played it and completed it on release. When I reviewed it, I pretty much gave it top marks. One for one as far as value proposition. Getting it at 25, even at this late stage in the game, is still a steal. Plus, you got the 2 DLC expansions. You got Light of the Tide and Echoes of the Fallen.
Exactly. So even for less than the original price of $60, you can get the main game and a DLC for it for still less than that, right? So you get technically a bootleg complete edition. So that's awesome. Andre the chat says FF16 is worth it. Fantastic. Next one up is Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes. It's $29.99 on the PS5 and $39.88 on the Switch via Amazon, Best Buy, GameStop, and Walmart. And the reason why I picked this game, guys, is as you know, if you follow my channel, I just beat Eiyuden Chronicles Heroes Rising, which is the prequel to this game. And if you don't know what Eiyuden Chronicles is, it is a spiritual successor to Suikoden back on the PlayStation. And yes, they do mean 100 heroes because you can get 100 heroes in this game, and which plays just like Suikoden. So if this is kind of your jam, I highly recommend this. Maybe this is the next game I'll play. We'll see. Next up is Broforce Deluxe Edition on the Switch for $19.99 via Amazon, Switch and the PS4, also at Walmart, and also available at Best Buy. If you have never played Broforce, it's Contra on steroids and on drugs and all of the above. So if you love 80s action games, pixel art, and destruction in America, you'll love Broforce, and pick up the Deluxe Edition when you can. It's a great game to put on your shelf and to play with co-op with your friends locally.
It's a 4th of July classic.
Absolutely. Speaking of retro, Sea of Stars is now on sale via Best Buy on the Xbox One, PS4, and PS5. Acclaimed to be one of the greatest new retro RPGs released of recent time. And it's like almost, I believe it was inspired by Chrono Trigger, among other retro RPGs. So if you're looking to add this to your collection, now is a great time. Pick it up at Best Buy.
Great game.
Next up, Dragon's Dogma 2. I do a little bit of a play on the channel for this. I haven't finished it yet, but I did pay full price for it because I was hyped with the game. But now, if you've been waiting, you can pay it for $48 on Amazon Prime on PS5. Now, for you guys out there that love the Yakuza series, Like a Dragon Ishin is also on sale for $21.28 on the PS5 via VGP. And I think it is coming to PS Plus Extra on PSN. So if you have that service, hold off for $20. You're going to be getting that for free on PSN Plus Extra. Speaking of Game of the Year, Balatro Special Edition is also on sale on Xbox One, PS5, and Switch for $19.99 via Amazon Prime and Best Buy. I have no idea what this game is about, but I want to add it to my collection. I know it's a cool card game and everybody seems to like it, so I want to give it a shot and add it to my Switch collection. Also, if you like the retro search action style games like Symphony of Night with a little bit of Bloodborne dash on top of it, The Last Faith is now released on physical form. If you've been waiting this whole time to play, think of Bloodborne and Symphony of Night had a baby. You're gonna have Last Faith here on the Switch for $19.93, PS5 for $20 via Amazon, Best Buy, Walmart, and so on. Even GameStop. I believe it also comes with a like a Holy Crux edition, which is like the deluxe edition that comes with extra stuff too. So check that out. Mortal Kombat 1 is also now on sale via Amazon Prime eligible for on PS5 and Xbox One for $30, so it's pretty much 50% off. So if you haven't played Mortal Kombat 1 yet, you want to give it a shot. I hear it's got a great story mode, as most MK games have. So,
I'll wait for all the DLC to come out and get a complete edition.
there you go. And for those that have deeper pockets than most, if you're looking to get into fighting games right now and always wanted to own a fight stick, the Hori PS5 Fight Stick Alpha, the Tekken 8 edition, the tournament grade fight stick for PS5, PS4, and PC, it all works on all those platforms, and it's officially licensed by Sony, so if anything goes wrong, it's covered on the warranty. You're saving, I believe, $30 on this, because I think the original price was around $230 or $250, and now it's $199 via Amazon and Prime.
Yeah, like Jacob said, Mortal Kombat 1 Ghostface just came out. Go check out his fatalities.
Yep. And if you want to play your MK on a fight stick, now's your chance. All right. So that is what's new, the deal for the week. And like I said, I wouldn't recommend anything here I wouldn't buy. And also, I want it to be physical, so this way you guys can increase your physical game collection. So appreciate you guys as always. I hope you like this week's What's the Deal. So you guys want an expanded version of it? There it is. And next week, maybe I'll have an even more expanded version. So appreciate you guys' feedback. All right. So if you guys are interested in picking up anything on what you just saw, if you use the link on the screen right now or the QR code, it supports the stream directly. So if you're looking to buy any of those things, use this link, make that purchase, and any of those I would say commissions will go towards the Gaming Academy guys. So.
Definitely check out next week, because there's going to be those Black Friday deals.
Yeah. So next week we're gonna have some crazier stuff. So just keep that in mind. So appreciate you guys as always. But yeah, do you guys have anything else to add? I know we went a little bit longer today.
No, we went a little bit longer today, but honestly, the stuff that we had to talk about was well worth it.
And to be honest, like a lot of people in chat are saying, we could have kept going too. a lot of discussions to happen.
Apparently, the Dudley music is a big hit. So
yeah, well, I mean, it's always a big hit with me. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. Well, I have to find NYC Jazzy into a segment somewhere. So.
Okay, now here's the question: will it be the J Music Band version? Will it be the extended reconstruction? Will it be?
Oh my gosh, we don't need to worry about that.
You want music? I can help you look.
Usually, I think I use the game one specifically for the arcade, because I think those are the least copyrighted versions of those. So,
I think I have a good one that you can use, or at least should be able to use.
Yeah.
I'll drop.
As long as we can use it, hey, I'll throw it on the background, man. That's what people want.
You will.
So, other than that, we have some great stuff planned. We got a project here for you guys that we're thinking about filming soon, maybe this weekend. But you guys are gonna have to wait, and then we got to take care of that stuff before the holidays. So, because the holidays is gonna get packed, as what do you call it? As expected, right? So,
like Thanksgiving dinner. It's packed.
OG remix. You know that track that they did, and what do you call that? For Evo this year on Third Strike, that was really fire. I don't know if we can use it, but man, that would be awesome, because that was really cool.
Yes.
Yeah, from what I remember. But yeah, I'm kind of, there was a lot of content out tonight. I feel so much older talking about Half-Life and Blizzard and old Blizzard. So
yeah,
my morale for my age is just dropped tonight. The Dudley kind of woke me up a little bit.
I'm pretty sure that this shirt is about the same age.
No, here's the thing, man. When I think of Half-Life, I think of me sitting in my friend's. He had a trailer in high school with because so it's weird. He lived in a trailer on a plot of land that his dad owned, he was building a house, right? And his computer was on his bed, and so he would play Half-Life, and I would just hang out with him, watch him play Half-Life, because I thought it was the coolest shit ever. Because I was a plebe console player. The console at the time that was PS1. Right. And so I would be like, dude, you have your computer is so awesome. It's so high graphics, and he was like the computer guy also. And which is funny, because he'd always want to come over to my house and play Final Fantasy Tactics. And I was like,
Grass is always greener, man.
That's what I'm saying. So it was like this symbiotic relationship where I was like, I would check out play you play Half Life and you can watch Final Fantasy Tactics. So grass is always greener. So anyway, guys, any closing statements for everyone tonight?
Keep an eye out for Friday, everybody. Keep an eye out, because once that demo for Dynasty Warriors Origins drops,
It's over.
this battle is about to explode.
All right, chat. You have homework, right? Play the Dynasty Warriors Origins demo if you guys can. And next week, we'd love to hear your input on the demo itself. What what your opinions are on the future of the game. What they think they could add, delete. What do you want added? It could be a great rhetorical topic. Let's make a thing for next week. Okay. But other than that, we're past over, and I am excited to close out another class session with you guys. Always a pleasure for you guys being in chat. Nick, appreciate your knowledge as always. Ace, your combat spirit is always there. We gotta put that to use in some way. Maybe we get you we do an Ace Nelson versus the world segment or something.
Yeah, maybe. Definitely don't forget to watch that Half-Life documentary. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And chat, same as always, anytime you have any stories that connect with what we're saying or your own, feel free to share them in the chat. We always love to see that. It's all about creating this community and just kind of talking about, our histories with it, and we want to hear yours.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because these memories are something that sometimes you just forget them, and these are pivotal moments in our nerdy gaming career. So
Yes, indeed.
So and I'll close out this segment with a famous line from good old Mama's boy Sephiroth addressing Cloud. I'll never be just a memory. So keep that in mind, guys, when you guys play your favorite game. Hold them close to you, and we'll see you on the next